Thanks to Warthunder for sponsoring this video. Before I actually start with the characters' stories, I feel like it's important to first give a quick summary of what the game's about. The game starts with a knock on the door, with your neighbor providing a written tutorial. He is the first one to introduce you to the visitors and exploding sun, and warns you to let other people in at night, otherwise an entity known as the Pale Visitor will break into our house. So, the game consists of us declining or letting in whoever knocks on our door at night, then talking to them and examining their body for visitor signs during the day, with the television being our only guide on determining whether or not they were a visitor. We meet a strange mix of characters, from victims, gangsters, grandmas, random middle-aged men, and even some children. Overall, the game consists of at least one person from every corner of society and provides us with a well-written dialogue that describes their struggles and thoughts while the world is slowly destroyed. In this video, I will cover all 68 characters' backstories, conducting a mini-investigation at the end to detail either their significance to the story or a quick character analysis to understand the developer's intent. Because, as you may soon realize, each character is expertly written, being used to replicate how different real people would react to such a catastrophic event. And if you're curious, the order will be the same as the in-game character list. For your convenience, I also added timestamps, so if you're looking for a specific character or have already seen one from a video I covered before, then you can skip to someone you're more interested in. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Warthunder. Warthunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever created, and it's available now for PC, console, and mobile devices. You can take command of over 2,500 different vehicles, ranging from tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations. These vehicles range from the armored cars and biplanes seen in the 1920s to modern fighter jets and battle tanks. Warthunder has some of the most immersive combat, with detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects to fit these powerful war machines. It has some of the most realistic damage models in gaming, with each vehicle having its individual components susceptible to damage. Each shell, missile, and armor type is modeled after its real-world equivalent, and the game even offers a detailed X-ray view, showing you exactly where your vehicle was hit, leading to its destruction. There is a game mode for every type of person. If you like fast-paced matches just like me, I recommend that you run Arcade mode, which offers boosted vehicle performance and simplified physics. Or you can opt in for Realistic mode, with a higher focus on authenticity, while still having a fair bit of intensity. But there is also Simulator mode, which offers the ultimate challenge, taking away all of the previous game mode's guardrails. This game doesn't require any extra hardware, as you can drive any tank, aircraft, or ship with just your keyboard or controller, and the game is heavily optimized with its custom-built Dagor engine, which can run impressive visuals lag-free even on potato devices. Join a worldwide community of over 95 million players in epic player versus player battles today. With an incomparable amount of high-quality historical-based content to discover, there is no game better suited if you're a fan of military history just like me. Play for free now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. And sign up using my links in the pinned comment or description. For new or returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months on PC and consoles, signing up with my link will give you a massive bonus pack, which includes the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days of premium account, multiple premium vehicles, and more. He is actually the very first person who knocks on your door and appears even before night 1. Our neighbor greets us, asking how life has been. We say it is the same as it ever was when our neighbor finally reveals what's going on. After a call with his cousin, he found out that something weird is happening with the sun and that people are crawling from underground called visitors. We ask what's happening with the sun, where he tells us he's as confused as us, even suggesting that it's going to explode. He then tells us his cousin told him to never be home alone, so he went out of his way to check on us. We let him inside and our neighbor tells us he's going to be waiting in the kitchen when we wake up. When morning comes, we approach him while he's sitting in our chair. He probably saw the news, as he once again iterates to never go outside and to let others in. We ask why we should let strangers inside our house, but our neighbor tells us that he heard from his cousin that there is a person going around asking if we are alone, and to always say no. We tell him that we hate dealing with people, but the neighbor tells us that we have no choice. He advises us to check everybody for visitor signs, making sure to take a careful look each time, and to not only rely on TV for information, but also look outside our windows. Our character asks what to do next, but our neighbor coldly responds to stay alive and hopes that this nightmare will end. He has hope in the government and tells us that we can stick together if we are forced outside the house. He gives us his phone number, which will be the only way we can learn about his story other than from looking out the window. Before he leaves, he gives us a case of beer, saying that it's from his brother-in-law. The next day we can call him, and he asks if we let a few people in yet, and we ask if he's taking people in too. Our neighbor says that he has to, even if his daughter doesn't like it. At night, we can see him playing with his daughter, but on the nearby window we can see the dead bodies of a few teenagers. When he was walking with his daughter, he accidentally stumbled upon it and finally realized how dangerous it is outside. We ask if his daughter is okay, and he isn't completely sure. Even with all of the weeds, his daughter ended up seeing one of their heads, and she can't be convinced it's just her imagination. That night, we can see a group of FEMA employees outside our neighbor's house, appearing to be taking soil samples. We call our neighbor the next day and he reveals what actually happened. They asked about the people staying at his house, then took one of his residents. We asked where they took them, and our neighbor was equally left in the dark. He was told they were taken for tests, and his trust for the government disappeared. We are about to hang up when he asks us for a favor. Our neighbor wants us to take care of his daughter if something happens to him. We promise that we will, and he thanks us. When we look through the window, we see his entire house in flames. His daughter knocks on the door and confirms that her father is in fact dead. Our neighbor so far is the only character in the entire game to have some sort of relationship with the protagonist. While they aren't the closest, the concern they show for each other might even be on the level of a friend. His end was truly a tragic one, as his daughter reveals that he was killed by visitors. You might think that he could have just stayed inside his house with his family, but the truth is, he had to let people inside, otherwise his wife or daughter would have been taken away by FEMA. It was simply misfortune that resulted in him letting a visitor inside his house. Or, as hinted by the Vigilante ending, it was radical people like the Vigilante himself who ended up killing him and burning his house, since he let people in his house so carefree. The first time we see her is unlike almost every other interaction in the game. Instead of trying to convince us to let her inside, she is instead asking to retrieve her dad who stayed the night. We ask her what her dad's name is, and she realizes that we are probably testing to see whether she is a visitor or not. We ask how she got here in one piece, and she comments on how it feels like opposite day, where people sleep during the day and go out at night. Right before we get her dad, she tells us about a game they made up, where they roll dice and each time they move furniture near the door. While it is subtle, our neighbor is really trying to barricade their door at night to stay safe from intruders. The next few nights we can see her playing with her father outside, but after noticing the bodies, they stayed indoors. A day later, their house catches on fire and the little girl approaches our door to be let in. We ask what happened, and she says that people killed her dad. We ask who did it, and she says that visitors came to their house and killed him while they were talking. We attempt to talk to her again the day after the protagonist tried to ask about what happened, but she breaks down before saying anything important. We tell her to rest, where she can be heard calling non-stop for her dead father. When the next day comes around, we ask how she is holding up. The little girl says it's okay here, but misses being home. We then lie to her, saying that it's being renovated, where she asks us a barrage of questions about what's going to happen. Our character asks if she saw what happened, where she admits she's not entirely sure. She saw her dad get hit, but she also watched as he got back up and left, giving the daughter hope he will come back. This implies that the neighbor was knocked down and probably killed, then was turned into a visitor. In our last conversation, we tell her that she needs to accept what happened. The little girl seems confused and asks to watch cartoons on our TV, then gives us her friend's phone number to invite her over. We try to rip off the band-aid and tell her that her dad is probably dead. The neighbor's daughter tells us we didn't see anything and that he was still moving when she left. Our character questions her why he hasn't come yet, and she tells us maybe he is too busy beating up the bad people. We apologize about her dad, and after staring at us, she starts wailing. If we call her friend's phone number, it turns out that her parents killed her. After finding out that their daughter matched most of the visitor signs, the husband killed his own daughter. This small exchange reveals that the biggest victims of this calamity are children. Even if they are completely innocent, the TV makes us believe that basic human signs such as white teeth and hairless armpits means someone is a visitor. So it makes you wonder, who are the real monsters? The visitors or humans themselves? Even though he has one of the most abnormal proportions in the game, he is one of the few characters guaranteed to be a human. When he knocks on our door, he tells us about how he tried to take shelter at a nearby bar, but they kicked him out. Mainly because of his personality. We ask whether or not he is a visitor, where he mocks us, saying we won't get a straight answer anyways. Our character tries to ask him why they kicked him out, with the bar guy responding that someone didn't like him, and maybe it was a good thing he was kicked out for his own safety. The next day, we questioned him why they threw him out once again, and the bar guy blames the chain of disasters happening around the world, causing everybody stress. His rage bottled up to the point of climbing onto the bar and screaming at everyone to stop blaming everything but yourself, which probably got a few people angry at him. After that, we ask if things are any better here. The bar guy tells us that he tries his best to not bother people, where his nerves almost cause him to spark up more arguments. But he stops himself as he realizes it's not worth it. We ask if he's okay, noticing that we smell something on him. He admits that he drank some of our beer to relieve stress. He tells us that we all will probably die soon, whether it's by the sun or visitors, and even if we somehow defeat the visitors, it will be humans that bury each other. We ask if he feels better, but he just comments that we will all die someday, and even questions what will happen to us after we die. We have a few options, but all of them end up making him feel worse, with the bar guy asking to be left alone. Our final conversation starts with us once again asking if he is okay, where he is frustrated at how small our house is, commenting that it's not high enough to comfortably hang from since he is so tall. He just wants the whole situation to end, but is powerless in changing anything. Overall, he is one of the most normal characters in the game. While he may seem rude at times, he is really just accidentally directing his anger at the character when his frustrations really lie in the current state of the world. Kind of like the cashier lady. His purpose is most likely to be a tutorial for the player, where someone who talks with aggression and has a super unproportional body is actually one of the safest people to let inside your house. She is one of the few characters that have a guaranteed knocking time, that being the very first day appearing after the tall man, and she introduces herself as a cashier that recently got fired. The cashier's main justification for knocking on our door is to escape the asphalt melting in the city she used to live in, as well as her home supposedly being attacked by visitors. Overall, she is extremely anxiety-ridden over the whole situation, yet kind to the point of saying thanks to the character if you reject her at the door. When you let her in, she tells you the story about how she lost her house. Once she got fired, she went home, but there were a bunch of other people in the hallways which she assumed were friends of her roommate. But after going to her room and hearing a strange noise, she noticed her friend's motionless body on her bed. Then, a man came from behind her and sat her down in the kitchen. A huge guy was blocking the exit. Then, they started inspecting her body. She felt too overwhelmed to scream or do anything until she noticed that the guy near the door left to get something from the fridge, where she used that opportunity to run out of the house, collapsing to the floor shortly after due to the sun's rays. When questioned further, she reveals that she has no memory of the sun burning her, despite being outside for the whole night and day. The cashier then starts to question whether she is a visitor herself. Despite having all of her childhood memories, the player can either soothe or antagonize the cashier lady, which all fails to put down the revelation she just reached. After that, she becomes even more nervous, scared of the player character himself, even implying that he could be a visitor, then saying that she wants to be left alone, after realizing the futility in trying to stay alive against the sun and the visitors. When the next day comes around, the cashier suddenly switches tones, saying death is coming and that visitors and humans are similar to the point of being mirror images. She then reveals that she herself is a visitor and urges the character to accept that death is approaching. The game then gives you a free chance to shoot, not even requiring any energy if you made the mistake of allowing her inside and talking to her for 5 days without realizing she's a visitor. If you checked for signs, you might notice that quite literally every single one of them are as described by the television. Her teeth are completely white, where she makes up an awful excuse that it was fixed recently despite not having memories of it. Her fingernails are dirty despite not having memories of digging recently. And she, along with the player, comes to the realization that she's probably a visitor after taking the eye test. Overall, she is just a scared, kind yet dangerous visitor in the game. Her lack of aggression and knowledge makes her appear human at first, but her later dialogues makes it more increasingly obvious of her true nature. She serves more as the game's tutorial than anything, showing the player to rely more heavily on testing than people's outward appearances. While he is always a visitor, he is one of the few that come at a randomized time, mainly around the start, but he is hiding one of the biggest secrets in the game. So, when he comes to your door randomly, he introduces himself normally while asking for a place to stay, but he references that he doesn't feel heat from the sun. If anything, he's constantly freezing, which explains his coat that he refuses to take off. He also comments that the ceiling is low when you invite him inside, meaning he has claustrophobia. When you let him in, you can pry further on why he's wearing a coat, and he answers by saying that he's afraid of dying by the cold, or even worse, having his body get even colder than it already is. He even says that he doesn't sweat because his body is so cold. We ask about if there are any remedies for his temperature, and he simply answers that it's impossible, comparing warmth to stars being created in the universe while he is forced to be an outside viewer, even saying that space nor society needs his existence. After that, we ask what he has been hiding from us all this time, where the coat guy reluctantly says he will tell us about it tomorrow, needing some time to think about something. The next day, he says he is prepared to show us his secret, even commenting that it usually ends badly, causing both his deep coldness and loneliness. Then, immediately after, he pulls up his shirt, showing a huge circulating void at his stomach. If you have anybody staying in the room with you, they will instantly become a corpse, and the coat guy is remorseful that this happened again, meaning he probably did this to a few more houses before he came to ours. After this, you then have the option to shoot him on the spot, or kick him out, forcing him to leave while the sun is still out, or until nightfall so he can at least survive. While he is one of the most dangerous visitors in the entire game, it appears he has no control over his powers. Instead, it causes him constant pain, and even causes him to hurt fellow visitors by accident. While she has one of the saddest stories in the game, it actually teaches us important facts about how FEMA operates behind the scenes. The widow approaches our door dead tired, asking if she can come in to rest. Our character questions where she came from, where the woman says that she doesn't remember, and that she is so tired she might just pass out under our window. We ask if her friend is sick, but she corrects us by saying that is her husband and that he is also dead, where she just can't give him a proper burial. The next day, we try to ask her if there is anything she needs. She brushes us off, saying that all she wants is for her dead husband to still be alive. When we try to give her water or food, she refuses us again, wanting to just sit by her husband. Our character then leaves her alone, where she briefly reminisces how her husband died despite trying to assure her everything would get better. We ask how the corpse she is holding died, but she says that she cried too much and is too overwhelmed to answer. We then suggest that he needs to be buried, but the widow fights back, saying that she just got him back and doesn't want to immediately bury him. him. We ask her what she remembers about him, and she starts recalling a memory she had at a friend's place. When the two were younger, they were just hanging out while drinking, but suddenly the usually quiet husband suddenly asked for a guitar. He then started playing a song that the widow absolutely loved, but when pressured to play other songs, he said he had to go and awkwardly knocked over a glass and dropped the guitar. It turns out he only learned that one song just to impress her. Then, the widow shows us the only picture she has of that day. When the next day comes around, we try to pry further on what happened to him, to which she blankly responds that he dies. We apologize, and she says sorry back, with her blaming the group responsible for her sadness. The protagonist asks what happened, and we finally get an answer. When the husband wasn't feeling well, he was told to go to a new FEMA center, but it turns out that was actually one of the quarantine zones. When she tried to check up on him later, they informed her of his death, but wouldn't let her take the body. She then hatched a simple plan, where she wore one of the lab coats, walked in the morgue, and easily took his body. Our last conversation is brief, as she has made up her mind to leave that night. We ask what she will do next, and she tells us that her plan is to go to their home and find the guitar. Even when told she could stay, she just tells us she only wants to go home where she belongs. While it is not said clearly, it is implied that the widow is planning to end herself when she reaches the home. Also, she shows how incompetent FEMA is at really anything. Not only did they kill her innocent husband, probably while trying to discover some visitor signs, but they also have laughably bad security, explaining why the quarantine zones were so easily overrun. When he reaches our door, he opens up strangely, telling us that we are lucky to witness humanity's final judgment and that the sun is going to clean the earth of sin. We respond completely confused, and he tries to think of an easier explanation. He says that the sun is burning us with purpose, which is to cleanse us of all of our sins. Humanity's lust and greed have angered the sun, and in response, it's going to bless us by turning everyone into ashes. We ask if we have to die, but he says the contrary. Instead of simply dying, we will live eternally in another world without sin. The next day, we ask if he is a member of some faith. He agrees, but says it's not part of the lowly religions we are familiar with, since he worships the sun itself. He remarks that only imbeciles think of it as a threat, and because of that anger, they are deemed sinners and will be burnt by the sun. The sun's anger is supposedly directed at the seeds of evil, where we then ask him what he means. He seems surprised, asking if we haven't come face to face with the aliens yet. He then reveals that the visitors are seeds of evil, and that they are the descendants of aliens from a long time ago. After inbreeding for centuries, they finally climbed out from the Earth and tried to take our planet as their own. But the sun is actually there to protect us, showing no mercy to the visitors and sinners alike. He then does a chant to beg the sun to forgive us for drinking the previous night and allow us into its embrace. The next day, we tell him that the sun has burned up a lot of people, and he seems glad, noting them all as seeds of evil. He says that while the visitors and blasphemers might try to reach the sun, they never can because it's meant for righteous humans. We ask how many more people need to be burned up by the sun, and he blandly responds with many. He tells us that it has just begun, and that the martyrs who die do not do so in vain. He suddenly switches topics, saying that he occasionally remembers the pain of his wife leaving him, who was as religious as he was. Our final conversation consists of us asking if he thinks this all has some sacred meaning. This question infuriates him, as we have basically asked him the same questions multiple times without understanding him. He gives up on us, as he understands that we can never understand his religion, then asks for a beer. We give him a beer, and he notes it as his favorite kind. It reminds him of the time he spent at the bar with his friends, with a scrawny guy who always stared at them disapprovingly, which is obviously a reference to the bar guy. The sun worshipper calls us stupid, but also kind, then gives us a gift and prays for the sun god to have mercy on our soul. After reading all of his text, it's obviously supposed to mirror Christian fanaticism or religious fanaticism in general, and the idea that he correlates to the sun kind of reminds me of the idea of a rapture. But the truth is, pretty much everything he is saying is completely baseless, and is probably a result of him being an alcoholic and having a harmful past. Also, his yellow skin and eyes are actually the result of having jaundice, also probably from his excessive consumption of alcohol. He comes to our peephole, noting how crazy everything has been, asking if we are okay inside. We coldly respond, asking what he wants, and he tells us that he has a crazy way to make money, and that we can make tons of money without lifting a finger while everyone else is scared out of their mind. We ask why he is here, and he says that everyone thinks our character is up to something because we let in tons of people. But he actually wants to roll with that idea and be invited into this house to have a crazy party. The next day, we ask what he did before the cataclysm. He asks us if we have heard of sports betting, and we respond by asking if he is just a scammer. The Amogus Guy feels offended, preferring to be called an analyst, where after being handed money, he has the ability to bet it all and get up to 10 times the amount back. We ask how much he made, and he tells us that he made 30 million of debts. But he doesn't care about them now since he calls himself someone who looks danger straight in the eyes. We ask if he is sure there aren't any debt collectors looking for him, but he tells us that all debts are basically cancelled because of the apocalypse that is happening. But the grind also doesn't stop, so he is trying to think of a new way to make money. He sounds like the sun was actually a stroke of luck, and he feels offended, saying that he actually predicted it all. The Amogus Guy then asks us if we want to learn about a new hustle. We ask to hear it, and he suggests that if we hand over tons of people to FEMA, they might let us into one of their secret bunkers. We ask if we heard him right, and he tells us to not be scared. Those desperate times call for desperate hustles. He notes that the quarantine zones are for sheeple, and that, to not be put into one, we need to get into the good graces of FEMA, and all we would have to do is hand in a couple of people and call them every once in a while, even saying that FEMA are good people. We tell him that maybe he's right, and he seems extremely confident with himself, saying that we can always trust him and that he has a sixth sense for hustling. In our last conversation, we ask him what he wants. He says that he made up a new hustle, where he explains that since the sun is burning everyone up, the ozone layer might be destroyed. So since oxygen comes from sunlight passing through the ozone layer, he made the grand plan to sell air, which is probably one of the most incorrect statements I have heard in a while. We mockingly say that it's an amazing plan, even suggesting that he should be a scientist. He seems thankful and calls us smart in return, adding that at this rate he is going to win a Darwin Award. We question if he knows what a Darwin Award really is, and he says that it's for the best scientific discoveries. We are finally honest with him and reveal that the Darwin Awards are for people who die in the dumbest ways, removing themselves from the gene pool. He then realizes we have been making fun of him this entire time, angry at us because he still believes what he is saying is genius. Out of every character in the game, the Amogus Guy might be the most stupid. His character seems like a parody of Reddit finance bros and sports bettors, who easily fall into the trap of gambling with the belief that they are smarter than everyone else. But considering how incorrect he is in assessing that FEMA is good, it's a surprise that he even survived this long. When he knocks on our door, he politely asks to be let inside. We ask him if he has been watching the house, and he comments that it's rare for a full house to be as quiet as ours is. We ask who he is, and he reveals that he is a surgeon that used to operate on the sick. Because of the hospital's low funds, he often had to operate on people outside of his specialty, but since the hospitals are gone, he is wandering aimlessly, hoping to help someone. The next day, we ask what happened to the hospitals. He tells us that when the news came out that visitors existed, everyone rushed to the hospitals demanding to know if they are one themselves. Of course, the doctors had no way to test for that, but they kept on getting in the way of treating the actual sick, to the point that FEMA had to intervene and move everyone to the quarantine zones, shutting the hospitals along with it. Our character asks if FEMA put him out of work, but he reveals that he actually ended up working for one of FEMA's quarantine zones. We then asked why he would do that, but he simply responded that he just wanted to keep helping people. The next day, we asked him what it was he wanted to tell us. He then gives us a question, wanting to know what we think of FEMA. We say that we don't trust them, and he agrees. The surgeon doesn't even know FEMA's motive, even after working with them. They had no level of transparency, since they had no explanation for where the visitor signs originated from, or what they meant. The doctors were essentially just handed a list of guidelines to follow to label someone as a visitor or not. This made him feel more like a border guard than a doctor, so he ended up creating false reports to help others escape. At our last conversation, we asked him why he isn't still at a quarantine zone. But he once again turns the question to us, asking if we believe the visitors are some kind of virus. We respond that we don't really know what they are, and he once again agrees with us. He then confirms with his experience as a doctor that visitors are not a virus, since there are no observable cases where someone suddenly changes right in front of our eyes. He reveals that FEMA is not in control of this situation at all, but instead are just trying to pretend they are. They didn't send people to quarantine zones to help, but instead herd people together so so that they can do whatever they want. We then ask him why he worked for FEMA, and he tells us that it was simply to help forge documents and free people trapped in the quarantine zones. We then say that he might have let visitors out, but he tells us that his Hippocratic oath means he must try his best to protect life and health. The surgeon tells us that one morning a FEMA officer called out to him and pointed a gun at his legs. He then demanded for him to stick out his tongue, which he did. The FEMA officer then laughed, calling the surgeon stupid if he didn't even know the tongue wasn't a real visitor sign. After that incident, he was so terrified of FEMA that he just ran away for his life, leaving behind all of the people trapped in the quarantine zones. We calmly respond that we aren't judging him, and he feels relieved and thankful for our understanding. But he cannot stop thinking about how many more lives he could have saved if he had just stayed in the zones until his death. The surgeon reveals a lot of important information that once again paints FEMA as a horrible figure. Not only are they a shady group that offer no explanations for visitor testing, which has caused its own share of chaos in its own right, but their whole explanation for visitors being a virus is probably complete bogus. They are simply trying to take advantage of the situation so that they can take control of the government. The first time we hear about FEMA is actually on the TV. The news reporter announces the creation of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which has notably led to the discovery of a new visitor sign, dirt under the fingernails. On the television, they refer to themselves as the heroes who will protect us from the visitor invasion, identifying up to 27,000 anomalies in just the few days that it's been active. They also give us a number we can call, which gives us pretty useless clarification on the visitor signs, unless we truly forgot about them. The next day, they can be seen through the window, conducting some unknown exam around your neighbor's house. They can also be spotted on a nearby window, taking notes and removing the charred bodies sitting by the field, while a group of soldiers protect them. When morning comes around, we get the news that FEMA has organized new quarantine zones to put potential visitors in, and by experimenting with the people inside, they have discovered a new visitor sign, blood red eyes. We then get a small snippet explaining FEMA's creation. The Federal Emergency Management Agency was a special government service formed in response to this sudden crisis. While what they are working on is secret, their ranks include expert scientists and researchers. They iterated that the best thing we can do is diligently follow the commands of any FEMA employees that knock on our door. On night 4, we finally got a visit from a FEMA employee. He tells us that they're checking in with the residents of our neighborhood. We ask if he's alone, and he responds they just split into smaller groups to be more efficient. Our character asks if we need protective gear since he's wearing it, but the FEMA agent says it's unnecessary. They just wear it as a precaution since they are outside for so long. He then tells us that they need to take one of our residents and run some tests on them to see if they are a visitor. We ask if we need to pack, but the FEMA agent says we shouldn't. Since we are the homeowner, we are to stay inside unless explicitly told to evacuate. He then randomly takes one of our guests, then leaves. When morning comes, the news announces that FEMA has enacted a new protective measure restricting travel to any nearby regions or cities. They also reveal a new visitor sign, hairless armpits. On another channel, FEMA discloses that the visitors may be an infectious biological threat, where if you suspect someone, handing them a special slip will prioritize them for the next collection round. At night, we can see FEMA soldiers examining the bodies of the soldiers who were utterly destroyed by the intruder. A FEMA agent comes knocking on our door again, saying that they are just doing a routine check. We ask when they will return the person they took, and he gives us a quick explanation outlining how they have to be quarantined after being screened. We tell him that we aren't interested in these tests, but he remarks that we don't have a choice, and that it's going to happen no matter what, while taking one of our guests with him as he leaves. On the television, we get yet another sign, that being film photography. The fact that it appears as a sponsor after the news segment probably means that it's not really a reliable sign, and that the organization is just pushing it to make a quick buck. When night comes around, we can see the aftermath of a FEMA agent gunning down a bunch of survivors, probably because they were trying to escape the city unpermitted. On the news, we get information confirming this, as FEMA has sealed off the area due to civil unrest in a nearby city. Someone on the radio is even warning us to not try and leave, otherwise we will be gunned down. The news once again tells tells us that visitors are an unknown biological agent, and that if you have been exposed or suspect yourself to be one, that you should call the FEMA hotline. On day 8, we get notified that an unknown armed individual attacked one of the quarantine zones, with several individuals using it as an opportunity to escape. They tell us that corpse disposal is temporarily halted and to cremate the deceased whenever possible. On the radio, we get a hint at what attacked the quarantine zones, with them saying it wasn't a human. At night, we can see them again, this time putting the people from the quarantine zones inside your neighbor's houses. Another agent knocks on our door, asking for more test subjects. We ask what's going on, and he responds that it's the repercussions for not listening to them. We ask how long this will continue, and he comments that he doesn't know, and that we should just listen to him to get this whole situation over with. He forces us to give him 2 people this time, once again saying that they will be returned. On the news, it's revealed that after the attack to the quarantine zone, they decided to put any evacuated residents in the nearby houses. FEMA then announces another visitor sign, being bleeding gums. The radio tells us that the local homeowners didn't really cooperate with FEMA. Instead, they were kicked out and decided to take refuge in our neighbor's burnt down house. When night comes, a FEMA officer can be seen examining the dead dogs by the fields, possibly trying to find a way to stop the animals. The news gives us a new discovered sign, that being skin irritation. A random signal on the radio tells us that FEMA is trying to jam all the other radio signals, and that we should avoid their patrols at all costs. On night 10, a FEMA officer comes for even more subjects. We demand to know where the people they took are, but he shows his frustration by threatening us. Our character asks what it's going to take to fix all of this, and he simply says 2 more people. He remarks that this is the last time we are seeing each other, as they either find a way to defeat the visitors or die. That was, of course, the last time a FEMA agent actually knocks on our door, and the rest about the association can be heard on the television. They label the cult as a new threat, telling us to report them to the hotline. They also discovered a new sign, fungal growth underneath the armpits. When we tune into the radio, we actually pick up on a FEMA team's communications. There was a heavy amount of interference, but we can take away that burning bodies have led to an unforeseen consequence. Day 12, FEMA announces their last visitor sign, rapid pupil movement. It was cut short as the news station was being attacked. We also pick up another FEMA communication on the radio. We hear them replacing one of their operations, where instead of burning the bodies, they have to apply some substance, which I'm going to assume is lime to contain an unknown subject. When it becomes night, we finally get a glimpse of what they were talking about. An entity, referred to as It, crawls across the field behind some FEMA agents, who were carefully documenting the cultists' deaths. We then get breaking news that FEMA has arrested most of the government officials, saying that they were identified as visitors. Because of this, FEMA has now taken the place of the government. They then say that fugitives from the cities have broken through their lockdown. The final message given is to barricade our windows and lock ourselves inside. We receive one more radio message from FEMA, where a unit says that they could not contain the subject, with it escaping the city, desperately calling for backup since they cannot take him alone. FEMA overall is just another corrupt government organization. Their methods are most similar to the Vigilante, where they operate on extremely rough and fallible evidence. In truth, even FEMA knows extremely little about the visitors, proving that humanity has little hopes of defeating them. All that they provided was a little comfort on the television, handing out hope that this nightmare would eventually end. There is also an ending that you can reach where the protagonist actually becomes a FEMA officer. If you call enough times, don't question the agent that goes to your door and hand out the quarantine zone slips to your guests. They will actually conscript you to be one. Kind of like the man in a hazmat suit. It's basically revealed that almost all of the FEMA agents aren't truly competent enough to deal with the visitors. They are pretty much just a bunch of loyal city folk that wave their guns around and follow orders. The surgeon is another character that worked for FEMA briefly, and he tells us that the visitor signs are pretty much bogus. He remarks that they are all common human signs, and that the signs weren't even properly explained to them. The doctors were left completely in the dark, forced to trust an organization filled with mystery. While she may look normal like the Immortal Man, she is one of the most obvious visitors in the entire game. When she knocks for the first time, she asks if we are home, and reveals that her and her family lived only a few blocks away. That was until FEMA came and kicked them all out, taking a few with them, where the remaining survivors all split up and ran, eventually leading her to our house. We ask Big Momma the next day why she was evicted instead of just knocking on their door like they do to us, and her response just comes down to describing FEMA as being a group of unpredictable and demanding people that know nothing. When she asks us if FEMA has knocked on our door too, and we respond with yes, she even suggests that we should rip off their suits and make them suffer with all the regular people. We then ask if they took any of her family, where she says that her nickname Big Momma comes from the fact that she popped out a bunch of children, saying that she feels bad they are hiding from FEMA behind locked doors. We remind her to answer the question, where she finally answers that they were all taken, adding that FEMA won't get away with it. She asks us if we have any children, and we say that we don't. Big Momma then asks why our house is so big then, if no one else is living in it. After that, we ask her how she plans to get her family back, where she literally says that they will make it out on their own. Our character asks her what she means, and she simply replies that they will either crawl through the dirt or make it through the wires and fences. That even if they don't dig their way out from under the ground, they will just tear the entire quarantine zone apart. Our character catches on that her children are really visitors, and we pull out our weapon. After asking for clarification, she further adds that her and her children will build mountains with our corpses, and that she hears her brood crawling towards us right now. She calls out for her children to come and take our empty house before we shoot her, with her final line being that she knows that what we truly want is death. Big Momma teaches us a few things that are really important to the story. First, it reinforces that FEMA isn't just a corrupt organization. They actually are able to pinpoint and capture visitors such as Big Momma's family, but it also shows how ill-equipped humanity is to fight them. Even with all their weaponry, they are not able to overcome visitors from digging their way into camp or destroying their reinforcements. She might seem like a normal person, but she has one of the most subtle visitor signs in the entire game. When she knocks on the door, she comments on how tired she is from walking, and that she wants to come inside to rest for a bit. Our character asks why she chose to go here specifically, where she makes the excuse of fate bringing us together, and that destiny has a reason for our meeting. We ask why she didn't just walk past our house, and Granny responds that she is too tired to continue. During the day, we ask her where she is from. Granny reveals she is from the city, living in a high-rise. She didn't have a husband or children and would spend most of her days just sitting on a bench, just listening to gossip. But after the cataclysm, all she felt around her was sorrow, leading her to look for a place with more life, and eventually, our house. The next day, we ask her if she has any relatives, and Granny simply says that everyone either forgot about her or is already dead, that they are too busy being bothered by petty stuff to care about her. But she also brings up a story of her neighbor's grandson that was always polite and visited, even making the granny jealous. But when the neighbor died, it was revealed that all the grandson wanted was the house she had left behind, hiding his true nature, even remarking that she was lucky her husband is dead because of their similarity. We ask what happened to her husband, but she goes on a rant on how horrible he was, how she only married him because her family wanted her to, where they were all saying that he was a good person. But after that, he showed his true colors, such as not appreciating her cooking or ignoring her while he drank, to the point that she was happy he died for a while, until she just started to finally feel lonely and turned to the television and sat in her chair listening to others. We asked how the bench sitting was, and Granny responds that it did make her feel a little bit better. But ever since the world went into chaos and everyone shut themselves indoors, she couldn't feel any more life passing her and started to feel lonely again. She hates the state of the world, where everyone looks at each other like strangers and continues to lie about things. But this is actually one of the most ironic lines, because she makes no mention of her visitor status. Unlike all of the other guaranteed visitors, there is no free opportunity to shoot her. Instead, she leaves a very subtle clue that, once noticed, cannot be unseen. Every few lines her face slowly melts, meaning she is probably wearing a skin suit just like the Intruder. Also, you might notice that her eyes are blood red, and she quite literally has 12 fingers. He comes to our door asking how things have been going around here. He says that he's not one to stay in one place, but he can't move around much like he used to. We ask why he is traveling, and the Huntsman asks if we have seen what the visitors are doing. They pretend to be us, slip inside our house and tear people apart. He refers to them as varmints that need to be wiped out. We ask if he wants to hunt the visitors, but he remarks that we are basically doing the same. He says that we cannot just shoo them away, otherwise they will just come right back. The next day we ask if he is a hunter, but he refers to himself more as a ranger, since he lives out in the wilds, with the only connection to civilization being a radio. He refers to his old home as a fortress, where he doesn't let anyone in no matter the circumstances because they could just be a sweet talking visitor. We ask him why he is here then, and he says that the reason he left was because he is running away from the intruder. We ask him how he survived if he was alone, and he tells us to bring him a beer the next day, so he's in the mood to tell us the story. When we bring one, he tells us his story. He tells us that he was keeping to himself in his cabin when a desperate person came banging on his door to let him inside. He was scared out of his mind and even tried to break the window to get inside, but after pointing a gun at him, he ran away. We tell him that maybe he should have helped him, and he makes the valid point that he didn't want to have whatever was chasing him to reach his front door. He then asks for another beer to continue his story. Shortly after the man ran off, the Huntsman went outside to get some firewood, but when he picked up a bundle, he noticed that his rifle was gone. He tore up his house looking for it, until he noticed the same guy outside the window holding his rifle. This time, he looked different, with saggier skin and no shirt. He held his gun with two hands and snapped it like a twig right in front of him. After that, he just kept staring until dawn broke and he ran away. After that, he ran before the sun came all the way up, knowing that he was defenseless without a gun. We ask why the pale man didn't kill him, and he doesn't know himself. He admits that it would have been easy, but decided not to, probably so that he could toy with our lives. And he is one of the only things the Huntsman would consider scary. As I cover in the Intruder story, the Huntsman serves more as confirmation that he is a true monster. That instead of murdering aimlessly like the other visitors, he prefers to torment the people around him. He is one of the few characters that not only leads us to an ending, but also comes to our door only to give us some advice. His story starts on the third day, where he suspiciously opens up saying that we have met before, where the last time we met was slightly different. He then asks to tell our fortune by choosing a page in his book. We have a few options, where if we choose the beginning, he talks about the visitors. In the middle, he talks about a possibly sad relationship. And at the end, he reads a passage questioning our existence. We ask him what it means, but he tells us he needs some time to think about it. He then shifts topics, saying that he came here to tell us to get ready for an upcoming event. The prophet tells us that the cat must enter, but refuses to elaborate. After that, a visitor carrying a cat comes by, and we have to let her inside to see the prophet again. On the fifth night, he comes again, commenting that he doesn't care about what we do with the cat lady. We ask him how he knew about the cat, and he tells us that he was given a gift that allows him to see further than most. He doesn't know everything in the world, but he sees our entire future. He tells us that something terrible is coming to meet us, and that it might be referenced on the radio. He is either talking about the intruder or the creature known as it. We ask him what we are supposed to do with that information, but he says that he revealed too much already. He then ominously warns us to not do any visitor tests for 2 days, otherwise we will be doomed. After not testing for a few days, he appears again on the 9th night. He notes that the feeling of our house seems worse. We ask if he needs some help, but he says he already got all the help he needed. His sight is worse than before and he feels weaker, but he also says that this has happened before at the beginning, noting that he is like a stork that needs to break through the ground to reach the sky. We tell him that we never understand what he is saying, and he apologizes, saying he was thinking aloud. He asks us if we have a basement and says there is something beneath the soil. We ask why we need it, and he says that he can't think clearly. He just gives us the directions to not jump yet. After that, we can go to our basement and notice there is a new digging prompt which uses our stamina. After digging it all the way, we wait until we reach the 12th night. He comes again, visually looking the worst he ever has been. He says he has forgotten our face and can barely see, noting that a mysterious woman might have left him. We tell him to just not die on the porch, but he says that he has lost his visions of the future and something is about to happen. We ask what he is talking about, and he struggles to remember anything other than the word jump. He then asks us to tell his fortune again and tells us to choose a page in his book. All of them don't please him except the end, where after reading about an aimless train going nowhere, he says that he remembers something. The prophet then disappears disappears, and we are able to jump in the hole and finally meet who he was talking to, that being death itself. Also, there is a special scene that can happen related to another ending. If you kill too many people, he will appear at our house again, saying that this isn't supposed to happen and feels bad for what's going to occur. What these scenes really show is that the prophet isn't some supernatural figure, but simply another puppet that death controls. His role is very similar to the Intruder, where instead of tricking us to let them inside, he serves to guide us to death itself, and more importantly, to stay inside our house. While his species is not specified, it is also heavily implied that the prophet is actually a visitor. This would explain his decaying body and deep-rooted connections to death that the other visitors have. But keep in mind that this is never completely confirmed. The delivery man, to my knowledge, is the only character you can summon to your house willingly. To meet him, you first need to see an ad on TV, giving you the number of the delivery company named Forest. After ordering something, he comes by our house shortly after, giving us whatever item we ordered. The first time he comes around, we act surprised, saying that we didn't know deliveries were still running, where the delivery man said that he did not expect people to skip stocking up when they knew the world was ending. He says that while deliveries pay a lot, there is a huge risk, and because of the sun, they only offer night shifts, and because of the whole situation, he is often forced to move around crazy amounts of food and drinks. The second time we see him, we ask the delivery man how he became one, where at first he talked about passing all of the screenings, deducing that he isn't a visitor, but he then shifts the conversation to talking about how he is still working in the middle of the apocalypse. He reveals that it's really as a way to distract himself, and because he came here to study at a university, his family is far away and he's all alone. We tell him that being alone isn't bad, but he says that it's easy for us to say since we are always surrounded by other people in our house. In his third delivery, we tell him that he looks kind of sad. The delivery man says that his coworker got taken by FEMA since they noticed his red eyes. He is scared about being dragged off to the quarantine zones for something as trivial as red eyes, because it could just be the result of not getting enough sleep. We tell him to not stress and that he will be fine, but he questions the idea of being fine in the first place. With all of the things that are wrong in the world now, it's almost like every day is just getting worse and worse. He even jokes that one day your hair down there could become a sign, making the world even more crazy. In the last time we see him, we ask what has happened to him based on his depreciating look. He tells us that one of his friends got killed, who was also a fellow delivery man. When he took the order, the homeowner thought he was dangerous and killed him, making the delivery guy think that everyone has lost their minds. We tell him that there is no other way around it, where he takes it as us saying that it's a good thing his friend died. He solemnly remarks that he's going to give us our order before he is shot too, then leaves to never return. The delivery man is one of the best indicators we have of the outside world other than the television or radio, because our character is trapped indoors, and all of the other people we let in usually tell us stories that don't involve a relative time. The delivery driver actually gives us a good timeline of how crazy people have become. At first, things are pretty calm, with the delivery man almost enjoying his job's new salary increase and using it as a distraction, but as time goes on, he realizes how people have honestly gone completely insane, with a co-worker being taken into a quarantine zone and his friend being killed. This is mirrored with the radio messages and the increasingly disturbing things we see outside our window and porch. Also known as the Pale One in the radio, we actually know a lot of his lore through interactions with other characters and communications. So if we had to start from somewhere, it would actually be this bearded man. Known as the Hunter, he actually had a face-to-face interaction between the Intruder just like the main character, where he first saw him as a human begging to be let inside his house. When refused, he tried to break into his window, where the Hunter flashed his weapon, prompting the man to leave. But the next day, he saw the Intruder again, this time holding his weapon while looking completely different, with the tall and saggy skin appearance we are familiar with. The Intruder snapped his weapon in half, leaving him all alone and defenseless. The Hunter then decided it was not safe and ran away to refuge in our house. The first time the playable character hears about him is actually on the radio in day 1, where in Fear they talk about how the Pale One is not human. He can be seen on day 2, staring at your window while a group of teenagers are laying nearby, obviously because of him. On day 3, they reference him as the pale maniac on the television, and despite soldiers surrounding your house, he comes to knock on your door, asking if you are alone. If the player answers that he isn't, he will just leave while looking disappointed. When day 4 comes around, he continues his massacre. The soldiers that were around your house have now become a pile of bodies, and he's parading one of the heads at your window. On day 5, he makes a little display on the head, putting it on a stake, pulling out its teeth, and letting the sun burn it. He then visits you again, asking if you are alone. When day 9 comes around, he appears at your door again, continuing a mysterious rant about how one of our people is deathless because of a single word. He then plays a game, where if 2 or more of the inhabitants of the house are visitors, he will let himself in. If the player succeeds, the intruder comments on how he isn't the leader of the pack, and is just following orders. Day 11 comes around and says this is the last meeting they are having. He asks the question of if the player is alone one more time before leaving and never returning. The intruder is the most malicious visitor seen in the game. Unlike the others, he appears to be fully conscious of his identity as one, as well as not pretending to be human to enter houses, preferring to use brute strength to get inside. It appears that he is given the explicit orders to only eliminate people outside of houses, making sure everyone is contained indoors with other people, probably to assist his fellow visitors. But the only thing we know for sure is that the intruder enjoys the fear that he creates. While he might seem like a normal person, he is one of the most outwardly cruel guests we can let inside our house. When he knocks on our door, he comments how society is over and beasts have come out. He also comments that he doesn't have to hold back. We ask what he is talking about, and he responds by saying we should just take a look around, noticing how rules have gone out the window and violence now rules the streets. We inquire on how many houses he has been in, with the mobster saying he hasn't stayed in one for too long. Everyone is too fearful to maintain proper order, but he takes interest in how organized our house is. The next day, we ask him why he sees people as animals, where the mobster tells us how we kill and eat what we kill just like they do, where the only thing keeping those natural desires on a leash is society. Our character asks what he means again, and the mobster tells us even more about his philosophy, where basic truths have been taken over society, mainly the idea of packs, where each pack has an alpha, and the pack when threatened will kill others. We question him why he thinks packs are better than society, and he refers to visitors as sheep in wolf's clothing, where in a normal society there are too many rules which are heavily debated to effectively kill them, and an alpha is extremely vital, as he shows no weakness while handling out swift judgment, where the pack members must follow blindly, asking no questions while following the alpha's orders. The next day we ask why he is staring at our gun. The mobster notices that we show the traits of an alpha, where we keep everyone in line, but the only issue he has is with the people we let inside. We ask what's wrong with them, where the mobster blankly says that we gathered a bunch of weaklings. He asks us what's the use of the young, old and sick when all they will do is make up a weak pack. Our character asks what we should do, and the mobster recommends that we should cut the weak inhabitants loose. But instead of kicking them outside of the house, we kill them publicly as an example, tightening our power over them. We tell him we only kill visitors, but he says we should stop babying them. He then goes on a little rant, talking about how he used to run the streets and people both respected and feared him. One day, a cabbie refused to take him, so he broke every bone in his body, killing him. The man he is talking about is actually the taxi driver's father. We then have our last conversation with the mobster, where we ask why he doesn't have a pack of his own. He turns the question back to us, where we have a few options to choose. If we press an option that shows strength, our conversation actually ends and he stays as a normal guest in our house. But if we say something weak, such as to save ourselves from the intruder, he gets emboldened to try and take over the pack. After some yelling, he pulls out his gun, trying to shoot us. But before he can murder us, we grab our shotgun and shoot him first, where he actually seems proud of us doing so. The mobster definitely shows a primal outlook on how humans should function, but one that is actually necessary in this circumstance. Whether we like it or not, our character actually embodies the ideals he is talking about perfectly, even to the point where we do it better than him, shown by the fact that he hasn't formed his own strong pack and intends to just steal our house for himself. When we first talk to her, she asks how our life is treating us and if we have managed to adapt yet. We respond, noting that she looks unusual. She asks if we like it and says that people have been talking good about her more than usual, then asks us to reveal more about ourselves. Our character says that we would rather not, and she adds on that it might make us feel better, but at the end of the day, she won't force it out of us. She then offers us a special deal, saying that while everyone is obsessed with the end of the world, she can offer us a special kind of attention. The next day, we question whether or not she likes it here. She slightly agrees, saying that it's cozier than she expected. She then thanks us for letting her in and asks how we feel. The protagonist responds very blandly, saying we feel anxious, which the woman agrees with. She says that nowadays long-term plans seem pointless, since we never know if the visitor's son or crazy person would get to us. She notes that humanity has already survived tons of catastrophes, and that we will leave traces of our legacy behind when we are gone. At night, when we look at the woman, we notice that her belly is bigger, where we directly tell her about it when morning comes. She acts like we just were under pressure and we were just seeing things, reassuring us and understanding the responsibility that we hold. We then say that it scares us. She then says that fear is useless and that the only thing that should matter is where we find our salvation. When we notice her belly get bigger, we ask her to explain herself. The woman says that we are frightening her and that maybe fear is taking control of us. Our character demands that she stops messing with her head, where she brings up our father, which we mentioned to her previously. She says that she has the feeling we are just like him and stuck in his shadow. She notes that we won't see him in the afterlife since we are going to opposite sides and that we shouldn't worry about it, but then remarks that we should never speak like that to her again. When we talk to her the next day about her huge stomach, we directly say that she's pregnant and due. The woman responds by saying that despair has taken a hold of us and everything is falling apart. We tell her to stop twisting the subject and she makes the valid point that she doesn't even have a bump. She then questions us, wondering if the child was real if we would look for it. We say that it shouldn't exist and she says that our instincts are just trying to preserve something, even if it's not useful anymore. She wants us to open our eyes to something new, but notes that the unknown might be what's scaring us. We then confidently say that we will find the child, and she brushes it off. After that, her belly bursts, and we can notice a moving shape behind the curtain. After that, we can find the fetus in the office ceiling fan and underneath the bathtub. At night, we can then spot the fetus through the window feeding from a dog, and when we go to the peephole, we get the ending cutscene. This is one of the most ambiguous endings in the game, and I have 3 main theories to explain what's going on. Either one, the whole situation is supposed to represent the birth of the Antichrist, represented by how the death cult holds the fetus as if it's their savior, and it was born from a woman who doesn't really follow Christian values. Or it could represent past trauma the main character has had with his wife. The only reference we have of her is a painting, but this whole event could be symbolic of a miscarriage, with the main character searching for his lost kid. Or the third explanation, which is that it's all a representation of the visitors taking over. The baby could be cherished because it's the embodiment of a new type of life that's intended to completely take the place of humanity. This might be the first naturally born visitor, and they might continue to be born until all humans are replaced. The sisters are one of the most unique characters in the entire game. Not only are they the only instance you are allowed to let in 2 people at once, but their interactions are highly intertwined. When we talk to the twins at the door, she tells her sister to lean on her while asking if we have a room available. We ask if her friend is sick, where she reveals that she is her depressed sister. Everyday life is a challenge for her, and she isn't in the mood to talk. We ask the sister what she's going to do next, and she just says she is looking for a place her sister would be comfortable at. She thinks that they can create new lives for themselves, and that things will only get easier. For the next conversations, we are able to contact the depressed and normal twins separately. So, for convenience, I will go over them one at a time, referring to the yellow one as the smoking woman and blue one as the depressed woman. When we talk to the smoking woman, we ask her how her sister is doing. She says that she needs to help, but she was able to give her a bath yesterday. She says that depression is complicated, and she's scared that if they need to run away, she wouldn't have the energy to do so. We turn to the depressed woman and ask her how she's holding up, where she describes it as a blanket of chains draped over her entire body, weighing her down. The next day, we ask the first twin what they are going to do next. She says that her husband should be searching for a safe place for now, where they can be protected from visitors and the sun. He told her that the sun isn't exploding, since if it was, all of humanity would have been wiped out in less than 10 minutes. When we turned to her depressed sister, we joked around, saying that she looks bright and cheery. She smiles a bit and says that she barely found out the sun was exploding tonight. She wonders if this is the end, and if there will even be the slightest trace of their existence. We then turn to the smoking woman and ask if she heard from her husband, and she worryingly says that she hasn't. She worries that something has happened to him, then gives us his number to give him a call. The smoking lady knows that he hasn't abandoned them, since he even put up with her sister becoming depressed, then reassures herself that he is for sure coming. When we turn to the depressed sister, we ask how her sister is, and she blandly responds that she's afraid of losing everything. The depressed twin then tells us her position of us not even mattering, since we are just specks of dust in the universe, and that no one will be left to grieve us if anything happens. When we call the smoking twin's husband, we try to tell him that his wife is at our house, but he tells us that he can't take the whole situation anymore and wants to take the only way out. He tells us to tell his wife that he loves her, then corrects himself, directing us to make sure she doesn't try looking for him. When we talk to the smoking woman the next day, we notice that she's sad, where she tells us that she has a lot on her mind. She asks us why the heat hasn't disappeared and that everyone thinks it's the end of the world. She noticed that the television indirectly said that the days are only getting hotter, and worries that the changing climate is also going to affect the animals. We turn to the depressed woman and ask if her sister is sick. She agrees, saying that her sister wants to search for her husband to ease the thoughts in her head. She has the feeling it's a bad idea, but says that she will join the search because she doesn't want to lose her sister before it's all over. In our final conversation, we ask the smoking twin how she's doing, where she says that she went looking for her husband. After going to a few places she thought he would be at, she actually found him, revealing that he took the pill and left this world. They bought the pills to take together if things got bad, but the husband was too scared and took one without waiting to meet up with the wife, scared about the sun swallowing him first. We then ask the depressed woman about it, and she reiterates that they found her husband dead. She remembers how he used to tell them everything was going to get better, but ended up taking the coward's way out. She then tells us that her sister is losing the strength to live, and has to take care of her until the end comes to them. This conversation at the end shows how close the sisters' relationship is. Not only was the depressed sister willing to switch positions, becoming the caretaker after her sister's husband died, but there is an additional interaction if one of the sisters gets taken. They will look visually sad and are unable to talk. When you try to check them, they simply refuse, instead wanting us to shoot them. Also, their whole story shows what the true silent killer is in the game. It's not the visitors or other humans, but instead themselves. Most people cannot deal with the world ending, so they decide to end their life on their own terms, causing the remaining survivors to only grieve more. When we first talk to him at our door, he apologizes that he is in a bad mood, hoping we aren't a bad person like everyone else. We then ask who he is talking about. The angry guy responds saying he was talking about everyone. He talks about the people that were devoutly following faith, but when God essentially died to them because of all of the recent events, they became animals. We then ask what he is so wound up for, and he says that with the sun and the visitors, he's just angry at the whole situation. He used to write music, but he understands that no one needs that anymore, and further explains that he doesn't want to become a monster. The next day, our character asks if he has calmed down. The angry guy tells us that he calms down fast, but also has a short fuse. He used to be a more easygoing person, but now a small thing can make him mad. He also suggests that the rage keeps him sane and shows his anger at the sun worshippers. After ranting a bit, he calms down and thanks us for listening. We then ask him where all of this anger came from, and even the angry guy says that he couldn't tell us. He says that everything gets him angry, especially the cultists, how they are just trying to convince people to gobble up their lives in order to appease some savior. He then says that they brainwash normal people and almost reveal a close individual who became a cultist. The next day, we take the hint and ask him if the cultists took something from him. He says no, and explains that his wife went to them herself. She used to be highly religious, but he loved her and made peace with that. But after the cataclysm, she found a new savior, believing that the cultists were the most sensible. Every day she got crazier until he committed some action that made her run away in fear. We then ask him what happened between him and his wife. When she told him that she was going to join the cult, he became instantly furious. He started thinking about how he thought she was just looking for a way out, and his hands instinctually balled up into fists and hit her. He then says that he hates himself for that, and gives us her number. He begs us to either tell her that he's sorry or to yell at her. He then says that he's better off hurting himself instead of others. We go to the phone and call his wife, where she makes it clear she wants nothing to do with him. When we try to apologize, she calls him a coward and says that she's better off with the cultists. And in this situation, she is probably correct. The angry guy is shown to not only be an abuser, but also heavily insecure. He uses himself as a punching bag for his rage, but even that is not a healthy outlet for his anger. Instead of trying to reason with the wife or supporting her, he decided to let his rage take over and hit her. It shows how the real problem in the relationship lies with the angry guy, and that cultists, while somewhat crazy, truly are just relatively normal people who just want a safe way to escape this horror. When we see him for the first time, the best son is visually scared, not understanding why it's so hot and why people are acting so weird. We ask him if he seriously doesn't know what's happening, and he agrees, saying that the news freaks him out, but his parents watch it. One morning they saw it, then immediately said they had to leave, abandoning the best son alone for an entire week. He then asks us what's really going on. We tell him about the visitors crawling up from underground, which once again freaks him out, and he wonders if they killed his parents. The next day, we ask how it's going, and the best son remarks that he just wants his parents back. They took care of him his whole life, and he can't imagine living without them. We ask him if he has any other relatives, and he says not really, but reveals that he actually has an older sister from his dad's first marriage and a grandma. He then thinks of a few theories on where his parents went, suggesting that his grandma was a visitor and killed them, or FEMA took them. Then, he screams out how saddened he is that they abandoned him. We ask him if he calmed down enough to talk to his sister, and he talks more about their relationship. A while before the cataclysm, his father handed him a letter saying that it was from his sister. She wanted to meet him, but didn't know what to think because he thought it was a prank at first. His dad revealed that the best son really wasn't his first child, and that he had a daughter the entire time. It made him feel completely weird, since he has a relative that feels like a complete stranger. He then hands us her number, telling us to tell her that he exists. When we call the number, we tell her that the best son gave us this number. She seems confused, then realizes that he's her father's son, but then asks us why he is with us. We tell her that his parents disappeared, and she acts surprised, asking if they are dead. Our character then says that we don't know, but the sister tells us that she is available to take him in. She adds that he knows where she lives and thanks us for helping him. We then go to the best son and ask him why he doesn't want to go to his sister. He says that he does not really know her, and adds that when his parents told him the truth, it felt like they were lying to him for his whole life. He was really mad, asking them to leave him alone. Then the whole cataclysm happened, and at last, he has finally come to terms with his parents leaving him. We tell him that he can go to his sister since she won't turn him away, and he says that he is scared since he hasn't traveled far from his parents and she lives a good distance away. We remind him about the fact that taxis are running, which he agrees is a pretty good idea. He thanks us for talking some sense into him, and adds that he will see us around. The best son, while having a traumatic event, actually has one of the happiest endings in the game. While his parents did abandon him at the first mention of the world ending, his sister makes the story kind of wholesome. While it is not confirmed, it's pretty likely that the boy made it to his sister, being able to have a new life and form a new connection with his half-sister. Just like the Cashier Girl, she has a guaranteed knocking time, which is after you meet the egghead guy, where he tells you to let the cat in, indirectly letting her in as well, since they have to go together. But the first reference we get to her might actually be the first day, where we see a group of ballerinas on TV dancing anxiously. But on the fourth night, she will actually knock on your door. Asking if we are open, we counter by inquiring if she knows the bald man, which she quickly agrees with. The cat lady also says that someone told her to come here but doesn't say who. Then she reveals that she is a ballet dancer and used to live in the city next to your house. At this point, our player character even notices her strange appearance, comparing her to the Intruder. When we ask her to prove that she's a human, she responds by either dancing or saying that she has 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head, which is an obviously horrible excuse. When we let her in, we pry further on her reasoning for being at our house. She just responds again that someone sent her here and doesn't even want to attack us, and all that she cares about is keeping her cat safe. We ask if she's human, but she just responds with a question stating what makes her worse than us. The cat lady then talks further about her orders. She was simply told to enter our house, then wait until she gets commands to do something else. After asking why we haven't been killed yet, she calls us dumb, saying that she has orders she will faithfully follow. She asks us what we are waiting for, where she is not pleased with our answers and asks even more questions. After that, we then get a free chance to shoot, where the cat lady actually urges us on and makes it part of her performance. The first shot misses as she turns her neck to the side. Then, after the next one, she unnaturally bends it all the way to her back. When you take another shot, she bends even further, contorting her body into what can only be described as a ball in seconds, where she says that she has become tired and lets you get a hit on her. The cat lady is one of the most obvious visitors in the game. She is actually the most similar to the Intruder, where they appear to be wearing skin suits and don't even try to act human. They also both seem to be acting under someone's orders and follow it to the point of not hurting the main character unless explicitly allowed to. She shows up at our door awkwardly, asking if this is actually our house and making it clear she just needs somewhere to crash for a bit. She's tired of hiding in basements and assumes we don't really care anyway. When we question her, she explains that she's been traveling, wandering around and trying to see the world, or at least escape where she came from. She has no money, no real plan, and survives by sneaking into empty places when she can. She brushes it off as just how life is now, but also warns us not to try anything creepy, making it clear she's ready to fight if she has to. The next day, when we ask why she's on her own, she opens up slightly. She says home was miserable, loud, and suffocating, and she wanted out. So, she packed her bags and left, convinced her parents probably didn't even notice. Since then, she's been drifting from place to place, surviving however she can. She insists she's fine with it. At least she has no one telling her what to do, no one controlling her. For the first time, she can feel independent. When we ask how she survived, she gives a vague answer and quickly grows defensive. She admits she's done what she had to do, including stealing, and doesn't see another option. Nobody would hire her because of the cataclysm, and she resents being judged for doing what it takes to live. As we continue to ask questions, she becomes more suspicious, demanding that we stop interrogating her. When we ask how long she plans to live like this, she snaps. She accuses us of treating her like trouble and suddenly brings up another man who once offered her a place to stay. At first, he seemed kind and normal, but eventually he tried to touch her. She makes it very clear that she won't let that happen again and warns us to back off. She says her dad taught her how to fight, and she's not afraid to defend herself from us. When we finally ask why her dad taught her to fight, everything starts to make sense. She explains that sometimes it was framed as training, but other times it was just abuse. Her father took his anger out on her, and her mother stood by and did nothing. She admits she's scared of becoming like them and questions why they even had her if they were going to treat her that way. Now, with the sun and the visitors making the world even worse, she wonders if anything good will ever happen at all. While the teenager appears to be one of the most outwardly rude and hostile characters, it is slowly revealed that she acts this way as a defensive mechanism. She has lived a horrible life, where at home she faced abuse, and when she attempted to run away, a guy tried to groom her. The worst part is that she still has braces and painted fingernails, showing how innocent she truly would be if this all would have never happened. When he knocks on the door, he feels relieved to find some shelter. We ask what happened to his eyes, where he says that he saw an indescribable horror known as It, and that he ripped out his eyes himself to try and remove the image, which obviously didn't work. We try to ask what he saw, and he tells us that there was a creature that feasts on our sorrow, pain, and fear. He went to the wrong place at the wrong time and saw it devouring charred bodies from the sun right in front of him. The next day, we asked what he saw again, but he tried to hide it from us for our own safety. He talks about how he thought by removing his eyes he would be free from the creature, but it now haunts his dreams. After that, we ask if it's better to not have eyes. He isn't sure, but the blind man is happy that he won't see it again. Despite all of the pain and difficulties being blind brings, he still believes he made the correct choice. On the third day, we comment that he's looking rough. He jokes that maybe he needs to comb his hair, but he later reveals that he had a nightmare where the creature snatched another person in the street as a trolley passed him, with him desperately chasing it to find out the truth. Our character gets even more worried, as we then ask if he is okay. The blinded man tells us about another dream. This time, the monster was actually chasing after him. He tried to escape to his house, but he fumbled with his keys too much and had to hop over a few fences. Eventually, he stopped, noticing that the monster caught up to him him and was reaching out to grab him. Our final conversation with this man ends with asking if he had another dream. This time, he wouldn't tell us about it, simply remarking that we are all destined to die, that the creature will tear us all apart, and that nothing matters anymore. For the safety of my channel, I cannot show you what happens to him next, but he basically decides that he doesn't want to be constantly tormented by that creature anymore. The last time we hear of it is on the radio. We can accidentally pick up on some FEMA officers' broadcasts where they tell us that they made a mistake by burning the bodies, probably because it feasts on charred flesh, and that another substance such as lime should be applied instead. They refer to it as the subject, where they call for immediate backup as it has actually left the city's perimeter, probably to spread havoc to the entire world. While we do not know what its true form looks like, we can see a black body running through our backyard's field, probably caught eating the burnt corpses of the cultists, and even though it is not confirmed, it is probably a subspecies or the primordial form of a visitor. It is the strongest creature in the entire game, completely ignoring FEMA's presence and only moving when it runs out of food. And I found a little bit more information on the creator's Twitter. Before the game's release, he posted a video showing a closer-up video of it eating another person in the streets of Venice. It is not known if this takes place before or after the story, but considering how undamaged the place looks, it was probably before. When he knocks on our door, he asks if we have room for a stand-up guy like him. We ask how we know he's really a stand-up guy, where he says that he has the biggest heart around, even joking that he only punches people with good faces because he's envious. He makes sure we know that he's joking, and he understands that 1 or 2 traits doesn't guarantee you're a visitor, reassuring us that he won't hurt people based off of what he sees on TV. Our character then asks if he is some kind of comedian, where he responds that he isn't, but likes making a few jokes every once in a while. He says that laughing keeps us sane and apologizes if his jokes rub us the wrong way. When morning comes around, we ask how it's going. He says he's feeling just fine and is surprised by the amount of beer in our fridge. He asks if our uncle works at a brewery and was about to talk about drinking together when he suddenly freezes. We ask if he's okay, and he tells us to forget it. The next day, we tell him that he looks down, where he responds that he doesn't want to go there. The player says that we have no clue what he's talking about, and the stand-up guy once again says that he doesn't want to talk about it. We say that we should know, but he says to not push it as he's barely holding it together. In our last conversation, we ask what's going on with him, where he says it's not our business and tells us to back off. Our character then says that we need him to talk, otherwise it will only be worse, which makes him finally open up since he realizes we are threatening him, where he reveals that he had a dog that died a few days ago. When we ask for more info, he then says that he killed her himself. We act surprised, where the stand-up guy explains how she was suffering every single day. She would cry every night because of her legs, and adds that it's because of a cabbie driver that she got injured in the first place. He did a drive-by and couldn't even get the plate, then adds that losing a pet teaches us more than any human. Disappointed in how short they live, we reassure him that he can stay, and the stand-up guy thanks us. His character is probably meant to represent the people who try to cloud their sadness by forcing a smile. When you consider how he indulges in our beer and tries to make jokes, it turns out that this was all a way to distract himself from his dog's death, and he is instead heavily traumatized. Whether or not you agree with him ending his dog, we can all agree that it was a disrespectful move by the cabbie driver who did a hit and run. When they appear at the door, they seem like a normal couple. The husband is respectful and simply says that they are looking for a shelter to stay safe from the sun. We ask if the wife can speak for herself, but she does not utter a word, while the husband simply remarks that she is tired and also shy. When we let them inside, we ask why they are on the street. He responded that they were trying to visit the wife's mother, but they realized they weren't going to make it on time. We ask how far they had to go, where they responded with a 2-day trip or a couple of hours drive. We call out how the timing seems to be weird, and he blames his wife as being horrible with directions. After another day, our character starts to get suspicious and asks why they haven't left yet. He blames it on the wife taking too long to get ready, not leaving them with enough time during the night. If you check his hands, you might notice that his fists are bloodied, but this is actually his human sign. You're probably starting to put 1 and 2 together. The next day comes around and our character is fed up. He asks if the wife is okay, but once again the husband talks for her. We repeat that the question was for the wife, and his facade slowly falls as he makes up an excuse about how maybe the wife doesn't even care about visiting her mother anymore. It has been 3 whole days, and our character finally asks what's going on. The husband grows angry at the wife, saying that she has been complaining too much and he is going to force them out at nightfall. The player asks if the wife is okay, where the husband says to mind our own business and back off. We pull out our gun and ask for the truth, where the man pulls out his own gun and points it at the wife. After some threatening, we are left with the choice of shooting, but hitting both of them or kicking them out, where they cover themselves with blankets and walk while the sun is out for a bit before collapsing. There is truly no good ending to this story. While they are an extremely elusive group, they teach us a lot about the inner workings of the story. On day 8, we get a surprise visit by the cult leader. He comments that our house is perfect, where we of course ask him what he's talking about. The cult leader says death has taken a liking to our house and that its presence here is strong. We ask why he is here and dressed like this, and he refers to the group as the harbingers of a new faith, where they strive to achieve death, because she is trying to simply free us from this chaos, and that their mission is to bring her closer, with it being the only way to find salvation. We ask what he wants, and he says the cult must perform new burial rites, with our house being the perfect place for it. After that, the cult leader tells us to protect his followers. We try to decline, but he says that our house will be burnt to the ground. If we threaten him further, he says that others of the cult will simply douse the house with gasoline while we sleep, leaving us with no other option but to help him. The next day, the news quickly covers the new cult. They say that the same thing has occurred across multiple cities, and because of the dangerous actions they commit, they are also wanted by the government. We can now notice that on the couch of our living room are the 3 followers the cult leader has us protect. The conversations aren't that interesting, but all of them are obsessed with achieving death. A few days later, we notice the death cult piling up firewood near our house, preparing for the burial rites. That is when the death cult leader appears again, asking if we have protected their flock. If we have successfully kept all 3 safe in the house, he will return again later to invite us to the ritual, achieving one of the endings. But if we don't, we can see them the very next night tightening themselves to firewood, ready to achieve death. We can actually see the aftermath, where their charred bodies cover the nearby field. With FEMA agents examining the incident, a black creature crawls past their bodies, supposedly feasting on their burnt flesh. While the death cultists may seem crazy at first, they might be rooted in an ounce of truth. In one of the endings, we can actually meet Death, the god they worship, who also lives underneath our house, who tries her best to offer peace to anyone who reaches her. So, burning the whole city down can be seen as an act of patronage to help everyone who's being terrorized in this new world. When we first meet him at our door, he asks how it's going and questions us about what he missed. We tell him that the sun is burning people alive during the day, and the stoner starts talking about a movie it reminded him of, where there was a bald dude who sent in a team of astronauts to the sun and had to launch a rocket to save the world from ending. Our character is completely confused, where the stoner doubles down and says he knows what he's talking about. He says that sci-fi writers are super smart and predict technology before it's even created. He then goes on a small tangent talking about sending letters to aliens because he read a zine about it with his friend, which are basically niche articles. The next day, we ask him what he was doing before the cataclysm, and the stoner says that he was chilling with his friends watching movies. But after the sun exploded, all of the movies were replaced with panicked commercials, and his friends left to prepare for the crisis, saying that it wasn't the time for fun. But this made the stoner angry because he thinks the fun should never end. We then ask the stoner what he does for work, and he brushes us off, saying that only losers work while he is busy living. He threw parties and made new friends, but he did say that he had a job as a warehouse manager that his parents gave him at one point. We then ask if he is just living off of his parents, and he explains that there is no reason to work when he has it all figured out. He then says it's dumb to not use his parents' wealth when he already has it, the same way we use our gun instead of hanging it on a wall. He then says that he has a special Tootsie Roll and pulls out a blunt and smokes it in front of us. He apologizes since he forgot to puff and pass, then hands us one of his regular cigarettes. In our last conversation, we asked if anything was wrong. He says that he is dying of boredom because we have 0 tapes of movies. We tell him that it isn't the time for movies, and he is disappointed, saying that he thought our house would be lit. But he says the people are weird, there is nothing to watch, and there are only books, even saying that books are Stone Age stuff. Our character says this isn't some movie theater, and he calls us a buzzkill, where we finally try to lay it down and say that he needs to calm down if he wants to survive. He then tells us to chillax, and says that while it is boring, being in our house is safer than the streets. But right after saying that, he once again begs for some TV to watch. The stoner, while being one of the funniest and most chill characters in the game, is not ready to survive this new world. Even after multitudes of people told him to take things seriously, he always refused, preferring to watch movies and smoke, to the point that it's even a surprise he survived this long. It is also funny when you realize his character is based off of a controversial online celebrity, Daniel Larson, and that the stoner lived off of his parents his whole life. The Morbid Romantic might be one of the most cryptic characters in the entire game. So, to my best ability, I'm going to summarize what he said so that it actually makes sense. At the peephole, he says that our house is beautiful and where we live is much more quiet than the city. We asked him why he didn't stay home, and he said it's because he's feeling unwell, but not because of the gangrene he has. He says that he wonders if he will live to see the next day, and wants a place to peacefully die at. We ask how he got gangrene, and the romantic shifts the conversation to talking about a girl he lived with that he described as beautiful until she was taken. When we talk to him the next day, we ask how his hand is. He says that his hand is starting to lose feelings, and he enjoys that he is able to delay his death. He then talks about the woman again, saying that he cherished the time together even though they just sat nearby silently. He then realized that he never truly understood her, and deceived himself to think that he has. We then ask him to talk more about the girl. He describes her as someone with dead eyes and strange proportions. He wants to uncover her secrets, and says that she is his beacon for when he dies. Our character asks how they met. He tells us that he has sepsis, and would die in a few months until the whole visitor situation started. And when they crawled their way out of the ground, he found the woman, dressed in white clothing with a hauntingly beautiful face. He says that in a cruel world where men defend themselves, he cared for such beauty, even describing her as too strange to live and too rare to die before carrying her home. We then ask the Morbid Romantic where the girl is now. He says that he devoted his life to understanding her until a FEMA agent burst into the house and took the woman. He says that it is a pity that he never truly understood her and only has faint memories left. The romantic says that men are trying to find ways to save the world, but have not reached an agreement on how, where he says that the simple solution is to lie in silence, just like how the woman did. I really think that the whole rant the Morbid Romantic goes on about is truly a reflection of his own feelings. While he says that the woman taught him a lot, in reality she was probably just another visitor that was waiting for help in order to kill the romantic. His whole analysis on her really shows us how he wants a world of silence, where there are no conflicts, ambiguity, and essentially complete serenity. A world that can only be achieved through dying. Also, it's likely that the Morbid Romantic has a fascination with death similar to that of the death cult. While it was focused heavily on a girl, which is hinted at being a visitor, it shows us how close contact to one may drive a person mad. Something that the death god wants, which is for humanity to die, can be achieved to a few people by mere proximity, entirely changing the way they think for the worse. The ex-minister is one of the most useful characters in the entire game, and that's mainly because of the fact that he gives us an item almost every day. But, as you will soon realize, he truly isn't as generous as he may seem at first. When he appears at our door, he says that it's boiling outside, breaking the usual greeting that most people give. We tell him that it's the middle of the night, and he says that it still feels like an oven. He asks if we have a bathroom, and we agree. This makes him happy, but he then continues on to further question us on if we have ice cream too, demanding us to open the door, remarking how he's close to passing out and being roasted alive. When we talk to him the next day, we ask if he is feeling any better. He says that he is, but then asks if we have any drinks he could have. We give him a beer, which he rewards us with some money, with our character calling it useless. We then thank him, with the minister saying that's how we should do things, with us helping each other. He then gives us a jar of kombucha, saying that no one wants to drink it, but adds that we might have a use for it. We ask him what he needs this time, where he asks us for cigarettes. He reveals that he was actually in the administration, but notes that things are really bad now, hoping that things will improve. We go to him again, where he asks for an energy drink this time. We then talk about FEMA, where he says that it's classified information. He signed a non-disclosure agreement, then gave us a coffee to shut us up and stop talking about it. In our fourth conversation, we ask if the minister needs something once again, but this time he asks for our shotgun. We act surprised, and he says that he needs it for protection, commenting on how he used to hunt and knows how to use it already. We tell him that we won't, which makes the minister mad. He threatens us, saying that he's going to tell on us, which will lock us in jail. We say that he is nothing more than a visitor to us, and he mockingly laughs, remarking on how we will be behind bars. In our final conversation, we ask him why we aren't talking to him in jail, which he defaults back to taunting. We tell him that titles don't matter anymore and that he's nothing now, but he only gets more angry, saying that they just put him on leave. He then has a moment of clarity and says that life isn't going back to the way it was. When he was an administrator, the whole country feared and respected him, but now no one cares about him, and the stress of thinking about it has tied his stomach into knots. The ex-minister's story shows how deeply the government has collapsed in their world. A minister as important as him was put on leave simply because of the recent events, and the only government in place is effectively FEMA, just because there is no one else that is capable, which was probably all planned out in the first place. The minister also shows how fragile trivial things such as titles and authority are in survival situations. When you are the one holding the gun, you become the law. His story actually begins on the television, where we get an emergency announcement that wildfires have erupted everywhere, and from that point onwards we have a chance for the firefighter to knock on our door. He comes to us knocking, asking to be let in. We ask who he is, and he says he's a fireman. While taking out forest fires, he accidentally got caught in the sun, but the surrounding smoke blocked most of the sunlight, allowing for him to still be alive. We ask why he isn't at a hospital, where the firefighter says they don't exist anymore. After the visitors came, all trust in others disappeared. He actually made the correct call, because considering that the only medical professionals left work at FEMA, they probably would have dissected him to discover if he's a visitor or not. The firefighter adds that he would have preferred to be out there dying with his buddies, and tells us that he doesn't have much time left anyways. He then hands us a FEMA slip, but even crudely remarks that it's actually dangerous since anyone who goes to the zones ends up dead. The next day we ask how he is feeling, where the firefighter tells us it's worse than he thought. He estimates that he has less than a week left, but he thanks us, as a roof over his head did ease the pain. But he once again regrets not being outside fighting the wildfires with his friends, saying that he has nothing left to lose anyways. We question why he hasn't gone home, and the firefighter reveals that he actually has kids. It turns out he doesn't want his appearance to scare them and have their final memories of him being a charred skeleton. Instead, he would rather have them believe he died putting out fires. Our character asks where his uniform is, and he responds that the bosses took it because the fires are burning up so many people there isn't enough equipment to go around, and the bosses care more about the uniforms than the huge amounts of firefighters that die, probably because they are harder to replace. The protagonist asks where the forest fires came from, and the firefighter tells us it's because of how dry the forests have been recently, making them easy to catch. He thinks of the fires as another misfortune humanity has to face, like the visitors. He then hands us a necklace that he was going to give to his family that was made of dead bees that once turned honey into sun. While that probably made no sense at first, it is actually a reference to a Russian poem named Just for Joy, Take from My Palms by Osip Emilovich Mandelstam. Our last conversation with the firefighter starts with us telling him that he looks awful. He tells us that his time has come, and he once again regrets not staying with his buddies and possibly saving others. He curses his bosses, then asks us for a smoke. We give it to him, and he considers it the last nail in the coffin. He takes a long puff and leans back, using his last moments to fantasize about spending time with his friends. After a few more coughs, the firefighter takes his last breath. Out of all of the characters in the entire game, he is one of the few who could be considered truly good. Even after knowing about his impending death, he still uses his time to think about others. He tries to protect his family from being traumatized and is a simple man who just misses the times he spent with his friends. While every other character in the game speaks our native Russian, when we first meet Wireface, it almost looks like he's saying absolute gibberish. but you can actually interpret what he is saying pretty easily, revealing a pretty sad story. He first appears at our door randomly, with his mouth sewn shut, and simply uses gestures to ask to come inside. The next day, he is shown with the stitches cut off, and he actually tries speaking to us, which of course makes absolutely no sense. But if we use a simple cipher, known as the @bash cipher, where the opposite letters of the alphabet are swapped, we can translate what he is saying. He reveals that because of his foreign language, some other people sewed his mouth shut, where our character obviously responds that we can't understand them, and he remarks the same sentiment back. The character asks how we are supposed to communicate, and he offers the suggestion that we could repeat each other until we understand, which just makes our character even more confused and leads nowhere. Our character finally takes a hint and asks how he is doing, even patting his shoulder and pointing at his wounds. We once again ask if he's good, but he tries to repeat what we are saying again, and wonders if the same disaster is happening in his home country. We ask how he's going to get home, and make a house shape with our hands, where Wireface responds that he was simply here to visit a friend, but was unlucky enough to get caught up in this whole disaster. We ask how he's going to get home, and mimic a plane with our hand, where he questions if planes can even fly still, but he hands you the number to his nation's embassy. Once we call them, they flatly state that there is no way to get to his country. Our character tells the representative on the phone that we need to send someone back, but he says that flights are not allowed, leaving just dangerous boat travel. We ask if they could at least take him in, but they say that they have no more hotels and that there is nothing they can do. We respond that we can't even speak his language, where he once again iterates that they are already overwhelmed and can't help. The conversation then just delves into passive-aggressive remarks due to the whole situation. We went to Wireface the next day and asked about his smile, while pointing at his face. He says that he found out that the trains are still running and has a new hope of leaving. The next day we ask if someone can drive him home, but he pretty much says that he plans to leave tonight to the train station. It seems like our character is finally understanding a little bit because he asks about the train, and Wireface simply shouts about how glad he is to finally return home. The sad part is that the embassy already informed us that all transportation systems do not work, except for boats, meaning that he probably misheard them and is almost guaranteed to not make it back. When he approaches our door, he asks in one of the most awkward ways to be let inside. We demand for him to return the ones he took, but he responds confused, realizing that we probably think he is a FEMA officer. He tells us he pulled this outfit from a corpse as a precaution against the sun's radiation. We ask who he is then, and the man in a hazmat suit tells us that he's a regular factory worker who built fridges but recently quit. The next day, we once again try to clarify that he's not with FEMA. He says that he's not with them, and suspiciously that he found the uniform in a car, which immediately goes against what he told us the previous night. We call him out and he makes up that he found it in a car on a dead guy, and that the FEMA uniform would protect him from visitors, which once again doesn't match up. We tell him that it's probably a bad idea to wear a FEMA suit, but he disagrees. He tells us that if he can explain himself, they would probably let him go, remarking that they aren't some secret society. On our third conversation, we've had enough and force him to show us his FEMA ID. After shaking him down, he finally gives it up, revealing that he really was a FEMA employee, then begs for us to keep this a secret. In our last conversation, we ask why he tried to hide the fact that he was with FEMA. He tells us a story about the time he picked up a guy showing visitor signs. After being in the quarantine zone, he died, and his wife came yelling, demanding for the body back. They tried to tell her that it broke protocol, but it didn't stop her from camping outside, continually demanding for the body. He said that after a while, a few of the officers caved in, giving her the body, which resulted in them all being fired. He added that she was so crazy that instead of just burying him, she decided to drag the corpse around with her. We tell him that FEMA workers are bastards and he feels personally offended, trying to put the blame on the crazy woman while saying he was just doing his job. The man has had enough and says, "Screw you," before leaving during the day, meaning that he either burnt up shortly after or is awkwardly waiting on our porch until the night. The crazy woman he was talking about is actually the widowed woman, who has a completely different account of that story, where she put on a lab coat to steal her husband's body back. Like most situations, situations, the truth most likely lies in the middle, where the FEMA agents probably willingly let her steal back her husband's corpse without much struggle because they felt bad. The fact that the only FEMA agent we can check is also a guaranteed human means it's pretty safe to say most of them are as well. The officers aren't the real concern, but the mysterious figures behind the scenes controlling them. When we first meet her, she talks about how the energy in our house is stagnant, but later says that we are a vibrant and assertive person. We respond confused, and she calls us a typical Leo since we take action. We tell her that she has dumped a lot of info in our already troubled mind, and she apologizes since she realizes we are a practical and goal-focused person. The fortune teller then says we are a complex person who juggles multiple constellations, and that by using affirmations we can understand ourselves. When we let her inside, we ask how she knows so much about us, and she states that she is a vessel for the stars to speak through. She notices we are an emotionally sensitive person and relates us to another person she used to know that always listened but never talked. We ask her what happened to that man, and she says that she wanted him to change his aura instead of his actions, but he didn't listen and life passed him by without success. She says that by envisioning a fortunate future and pouring our cosmetic energy into that dream, we can eventually reach it. She encourages us to do the same and gives us a phone number that apparently is owned by an expert. When we call the number, it turns out that it's actually the mushroom guy who rambles nonsense to us for a while until eventually hanging up. After that, we curiously ask the fortune teller what is the next step we should take. She says that we should choose ourselves, to listen to our inner ocean. She said this was all taught by her mentor, so we ask who they even were. The fortune teller says that she was a great woman who guided her like a lighthouse in a storm. The mentor opened her eyes to everything, but the issue was that the mentor couldn't see as far as the fortune teller because she couldn't conceive herself as the center of the universe. We ask how she helped herself, and she refers to her own existence as a home, where we should try to accept it instead of fighting against it. We finally ask what she wants from us, and she responds confused since she never was looking for anything in particular. She then motivates the main character to join her in some affirmations, trying to convince us to say that we are the author of this sanctuary. Our character tells her that we don't want to become the author of anything, and she says that our home is waiting to embrace us, but we are refusing it because of our fear and authority. She tells us that we only see ourselves, and that all we have to do is shift our energy 3 degrees to the right to finally achieve joy. She then performs a small ritual that does nothing to help us. After she notices it didn't work, she then wants us to perform affirmations, where she wants us to repeat that we are a happy person. We do it for a while until we give up and say this is worthless, where the fortune teller says that we will never become happy since we have no desire for it. She concludes that there is no helping us because even the affirmations couldn't do anything. The fortune teller is one of the most interesting characters in the game because she gives us an insight into someone who has gone completely insane. She is obviously supposed to emulate the craziness of people who believe in and follow astrology closely, believing in superstitions and the supernatural. It's also interesting to note that her talisman she carries is actually a stick figure from the Blair Witch Project. And she has a crazy amount of separate conversations, that being 7, meaning that chances are she will be taken away by FEMA before you finish talking to her. When we first meet him, he can be seen asking for help, saying that he has been shot. We ask who did this to him, and he blames FEMA. He said that he climbed the fence and ran, and that they suck at shooting but managed to hit him. Luckily, it didn't hit any vitals, but he's still bleeding out. We ask him to tell us about the quarantine zones, where the wounded man says that it's just an empty parking lot that's fenced off with tents and shipping containers. He also adds that their security sucks, and they were preparing for something. It just so happened that the time he chose to run was bad, since a guard immediately saw and shot at him. The next day, we asked him why FEMA came after him. He says he doesn't know, but says it was because of some routine sweep. He says that his neighbor probably ratted him out since she hated him. We then ask how he is feeling, and the wounded man says that he's fine since the bullet went clean through. He then messes up and says that he will find the lunatic that shot him, and that we should have seen him. We catch him on his mistake, and try to say that he meant one of the FEMA agents, but we force him to tell the truth, revealing that while he did get out of the quarantine zone through the help of a doctor, he couldn't return home because the neighbor would just report him again. That was when he ran into that lunatic who shot him. We then ask him to tell us more about the lunatic with the rifle, where he talks about how he was covered with teeth and fingers. The lunatic saw some doubt on his face and immediately pulled his gun on the wounded man. Luckily, the wounded man noticed and fought him for a little bit, but then he fired. The wounded man coincidentally hit his head against the lunatic, knocking him out, which allowed him to run away. He then tells us that he only lied about who shot him, because otherwise we never would have let him in, arguing the valid point that we would have rejected him since an armed psychopath was searching for him. We then say it's okay to stay, and the wounded man thanks us. He's happy that we have a gun and are able to fight him off if we have to, and hopes that someone or the pale visitor already got to him. It's very interesting to see how many interactions with other characters the wounded man had. Not only was he let out of the quarantine zone due to the surgeon forging his documents, the vigilante that comes to our door also shoots him. And considering that his visitor status is always randomized but he is always going to be shot, he serves as visual proof that the vigilante almost indiscriminately kills people, with a lot of innocent victims. Then, he briefly talks about the pale visitor, showing how interconnected and local the characters in this game are. When he shows up at our door, he calls out, asking if anyone is alive inside and to be let in. When we tell him to stop banging on the door, he apologizes, saying he hasn't had any sleep. He mentions that he used to be a gravedigger, though he says the job doesn't mean much anymore since people don't get proper graves now. They just fall where they stand and start to rot. When we ask if he's seen anything out there, his tone changes. He tells us about a grave he was digging for someone. While he worked, the stranger stood nearby and watched him. Then his shovel struck something. He thought it was a rock at first, but it turned out to be a hand reaching up through the dirt. A visitor pulled itself out of the ground while the man watching laughed, and the gravedigger ran without looking back and didn't dare return home, deciding it was safer to stay near other people. The next day, we ask why he ever became a gravedigger in the first place. He struggles to explain it, then compares the cemetery to a library, where it is quiet and full of stories that no one reads anymore. He used to know every grave by heart, who was buried where, how they were dressed, how they were laid to rest. One day, while digging a routine grave, he found it was completely empty. According to the records, someone should have been there. He remembered the man clearly, even the fact that he had a mustache, but the body was gone. He wonders out loud if disappearing from a grave is like dying all over again. When we ask what he did after finding the empty grave, he says he sat on the edge and stared into it. When he finally looked up, he saw someone standing far away, watching like it was a funeral. No eyes, just a wide grin with teeth that almost glowed. After seeing him, he panicked and ran away. The figure didn't chase him. It simply vanished like smoke. And that was around the time the whole cataclysm started. We ask why he still digs when no one buries the dead anymore. He admits that he mostly just watches now, but after everything he'd seen, he started carefully checking fresh graves. He expected something to move, or something to crawl out again. Instead, everything was normal, with bones where they should be. That's when he began to suspect that visitors weren't really the dead returning. When we ask if he's been digging up graves himself, he reacts defensively. He says he spent his whole life around death, and that it never used to scare him. And even if they are, there's no guarantee the dead stay put. He tells us about the grave he personally filled that later turned out to be empty, which haunts him. He starts to wonder if one day his own grave will be empty too, or if maybe he's already a visitor without realizing it. He quickly brushes it off, saying he was just shaken. In our final conversation, we ask where he thinks the visitors come from. He points out how familiar they feel, where they aren't like people, but instead memories of people. He then reveals his theory that maybe visitors aren't dead at all. Maybe they're the thoughts we never bury, the fears, regrets, and feelings we refuse to let go of. They sit quietly until there's nothing left to distract us. Then they crawl back out, not looking to eat people, but for attention. The more afraid you are, the closer they get, because remembering something is the first step to bringing it back to life. The Gravedigger reveals some of the most important information in the game, namely that visitors truly do come from the ground, and it isn't just misinformation from FEMA. Also, he gives us a pretty strong theory on what the visitors are, that they aren't truly the dead, but memories of people that should have been buried but weren't. This can explain why certain characters like the cashier lady were turned into a visitor, since she died unceremoniously outside because of the sun, then suddenly woke up as one. But don't take this as a true fact, since this game prefers to leave things completely ambiguous and gives us no clear answers to big plot points. When we meet him for the first time, he opens up in one of the strangest ways, asking if we ever dream. Our character is confused and he repeats himself, asking if we still see anything when we sleep. He also says that people barely dream anymore. We ask him why he cares, and he says that dreams are something we rely on for comfort, but recently they have broken down because of the cataclysm. The next day, we asked him if he got any sleep, but he says that he wasn't trying to get any, weirdly enough hoping that someone in our house still does. But he said that no one has shared any dreams with him yet, hoping that they will eventually open up to him. The next day, we ask him why he is so obsessed with dreams, and he seems somewhat offended, saying that it's weird we reached that conclusion. He then asks us if we are at least a little bit curious about sleeping, how it taps into our subconscious. The Sleepless Man then tells us about his last dream, where a black train was chasing him, causing him to wake up and scream, also telling us that he was driving the train towards himself. In our last conversation, we ask him what he is hiding in his dreams, and he says that he hasn't slept in a few days, but lets us in on a big secret. It turns out that the Sleepless Man can actually watch other people's dreams, but ever since the cataclysm hit, it's all gone quiet, and he couldn't sleep anymore. He then gets very close to our character, where we ask what he's doing. He tells us that he's looking for our dreams, trying to find some peace by finding where we are hiding it. We tell him that he needs to back off immediately, where he responds that he needs dreams, but he's already seen in our eyes that we don't have any. He tells us that we can relax, but ominously adds that he could just be waiting for our guard to drop. The Sleepless Man is definitely one of the weirdest characters in the game. He is the most similar to the Prophet, where he has seemingly supernatural powers that are given no explanation. But I believe that it's actually because of the Death's influence that he cannot read them anymore, similar to how the Prophet slowly loses his powers. Keep in mind that he also could have just gone completely insane, and the whole tapping into dreams thing is made up. When we check our door, the homeless man seems visually surprised, thinking at first that our house is empty. He then asks if he can crash here, but adds that he hasn't been around people for a while. We ask him why he's alone, where the homeless man says that no one wants to be around him because of his low class. But he then talks about how he's no different than anybody else, but is way different than the worst of people. We ask him how he survived alone, where he reveals that he robbed empty houses and apartments. But there was a moment he almost quit, saying that he will tell us a few stories if we let him in. The next day, we ask the homeless man how the scavenging is going, which makes him go on a small rant where he clarifies that he only steals from the dead. He justifies it, saying that a dead guy has no use for a coat and that using it might save his own or someone else's life. The homeless man even goes as far as to say that we shouldn't treat dead people like a shrine, showing how little respect he has for people. In our second conversation, we asked him why he decided to become a scavenger. The homeless man then says that it's his only way to avoid hurting people, since the dead don't fight back. He adds that he's just trying to survive, and still wants to use what he stole to help others. The player then asks the homeless man what he came across while scavenging. He struggles for a bit, then talks about how he found an abandoned library, an art show, and a day where the sun looked like a painting. He remarks how he used to get up really early and notice the sun come out, promising a good day. But now the sun is considered the enemy, and no one has any answers to hand out. The next day, the player asks him if he's done scavenging, which he immediately disagrees with. But the homeless man then says that he doesn't know if he can keep doing it, since he found an empty house with a body on the floor, with gunshot wounds all over his back. The homeless man noticed that he was protecting something, so he flipped him over. But he then says that he's too traumatized to relive that memory, and wants to tell us later. In our final conversation, we asked him what was under the body. The homeless man then reveals that there was actually a little girl under him, dead from the bullets. He expected adults to be dead, but for him, children are a completely different story. He felt really bad and noticed that she was hugging a little toy cat. The homeless man even noticed her expression, being frozen in fear. That moment hit very personally, making the homeless man want to stop looting bodies. But he explains that he is too late and must keep scavenging in order to survive. The homeless man depicts what the lowest members of society do during the end of the world. They are used to being treated harshly, experiencing the worst of humanity even before the whole cataclysm. So, when anarchy finally comes around, they decide to take in distasteful activities such as looting bodies and robbing abandoned houses. His story also once again shows how the true victims of this game are children. It is left to mystery on who actually shot the girl, but it was most likely either FEMA or the Vigilante, who characterized the two as visitors and shot them. When looking through the peephole, we can see her telling her kid to stand still, where she then asks if we can help. We ask what happened and she says that she is exhausted and just wants a place to sleep. She says that she had 5 kids, but the kid she is holding is the only one left. The dad left too, and she just wants a safe place to sleep. The next day, we ask if she and the kid are okay. The mom says that her kid is tired just like her, and that he is shy around new people. She feels bad for forcing her kids to go through all of this, but realizes it's too late anyways. The next day we noticed the kid disappeared, so we asked where he went. She says that he's probably still around and just wandered, then asks if we have a phone so that she can call their father. Later on, we ask if she called him, but then she goes on a small tangent about how she had to carry the whole burden of the family. She said that they were just tolerating each other, but he never ended up leaving. She then gives us her husband's number and tells us to give him a piece of her mind. When we call her husband, we tell him that she lost the kids, where the husband doesn't seem surprised. He asked if we checked her mother's place and we disagreed, adding that he won't help us. We then say that they should both figure it out themselves, but the husband tells us to leave him alone. We go back to the deadbeat mom and ask her if she finally went to see her husband, where she tells us that she's too exhausted from having to take care of everyone in the family. She also referenced that the husband would sometimes do things that made it almost tolerable. We asked her what kinds of things he did, and she brought up a story where he used to drive around some women. After she nagged him over and over about it, he finally switched jobs so that he wouldn't see her, making the mom question if he actually loved her the whole time. We then ask if she's worried about the kids, and she calmly responds that she doesn't care about them as much as she probably should. She talked about how she messed up her first child, and as she had more, she kept on making mistakes over and over until the doctors told her she couldn't have kids. Then she says that as things got hard, it became awful. We ask her what was awful, and she reveals that she would raise her hand against them when she lost her temper. She also says that after losing her kids, she finally feels happy. The deadbeat mom is a very tragic but also immature character. She has a bad relationship with her husband, with constant arguing, but deep down she secretly wishes that he truly loved her. But most likely due to her abusive behavior, both the kids and husband were simply afraid to leave the deadbeat because they would be punished. This became more apparent as the 5 children are implied to have fled to their grandmother's place, and the husband being somewhere far away too. Also, the way that the game is structured made it almost impossible to get her full dialogue unless you're really lucky, because it's 7 separate conversations, and the cult leader on day 9 replaces her seat with the cultists. You have to literally get her on day 1, otherwise you cannot finish the complete dialogue. While your first impressions probably would tell you that she is some dangerous visitor, like most characters, she has a random chance of being one or not. When we look through our peephole, she says that our house is the farthest one out and should suit her just fine. We ask her what it suits her for, and she seems frustrated we didn't understand her. She reiterates that she wants to hide away at our house and wonders if we have amenities like holy icons. We shout that this isn't a hotel, and she sarcastically tells us she wouldn't have figured it out, and that she just wanted to know if this house was worthy of her humble self. The next day, we ask her how she likes the house, and she instantly responds that it's wretched. She notes that the layout makes no sense, the furniture is old and probably was a meal for moths, and that we couldn't even hang a cross to make it a proper room, which is probably a translation error because only a few feet away we have a cross in the middle of the wall. We then ask why she won't just leave if she hates it here so much. The nun then says that she would have never left her monastery if it survived, and that she doesn't care about this pile of rubble that we call a house. She then goes on about how our house smells like murder and death, where we smite down anyone we deem a demon. She even suggests that we might be a demon ourselves, but she is safe because the Heavenly Father watches over her. We then ask why she didn't stay in her monastery, where she first clarifies that it isn't hers, but instead owned by the Lord. But then she goes on about a story where a group of people broke into the monastery, drove all of the nuns out, then took whatever they wanted, referring to them as barbarians and beasts. We asked what those blasphemers wanted, and she said that it was because she refused to grant them entry because they weren't baptized. After an argument, they eventually broke through the door and threw her out. We then ask if she turned away those in need, and she doubles down, saying that they were the ones who turned themselves away from God, and that even if all they wanted was shelter from the sun or visitors, the Lord's house is not fit for some abominations like them, even implying that if they were burnt outside, then it was simply God's judgment. We call her despicable, and this makes her absolutely furious. After saying that she doesn't want to spend another second in this house and cursing us, she leaves the building during the day. While I did say that she has a random chance of being a visitor, the nun is still one of the most outwardly evil characters in the entire game, even though her position as a nun meant that her goal should be to help as many people as possible in these troubling times. If anything, she did the exact opposite. She represents the worst of humanity, who take advantage of others and do things in their best interest. I find it interesting how much of a foil the kindergarten teacher is to her, but how similar the outcomes were. Even after having completely different stances on whether or not they should help others, they were eventually run out by the mob of panicked civilians and forced to take refuge at our house. After checking our door, the armchair lawyer can be seen asking us if we are renting out rooms here. We tell him that we are doing something like that, which he notes is vague. The armchair lawyer then says that we can finalize the agreement later, asking how much we charge per night. We say that he can pay if he wants to, which angers him since he believes we are giving him a favor. He then says, "It's crazy, we would turn down good money," then reminds us that we will settle this with a legal contract later on. As the day comes around, we ask him what we need to do now. The armchair lawyer says that we need to finalize the appropriate rental agreement, which we have no clue how to do. He is surprised we don't even have the paperwork on hand, then says that we need to find a notary. We ask him why he doesn't go himself, which offends him, adding that we should be using sir when addressing him. We tell him to go away, where he hits us with an actually. The protagonist asks him if he can just let this go, which he quickly denies, saying that we need to legally finalize this rental agreement. We say that we have nothing to finalize it with, where he once again cites an article of the Constitution. We tell him that he's getting us angry, but he continues his behavior, saying that we are once again breaking code, and this will all come back at us eventually. When day comes around, we ask what he wants now, where he asks for our firearm license after noticing our shotgun. We tell him that it's none of his business, making him conclude that we don't have one. He asks us if having a gun makes us a law, allowing us to interrogate everyone else but never having it turned on us. The armchair lawyer then says that we are mistaken, since there is always a bigger fish than us. We tell him that we have had enough and that we are dealing with a lot already, but this just makes him taunt us, with him once again questioning where our authority comes from and saying that there is no reason to sympathize with us. In our next conversation, we go to him surprised that he's still here. He notices that we say sir, but says that it's too late to show respect since he's going to report us soon. We ask him what he's going to report, and he says that this isn't really our home, and that we actually are a visitor that murdered and is impersonating the original homeowner, meaning that he's going to call FEMA to come after us. After that, literally every single dialogue option results in us shooting him, saying the weak defense that we won't do it since we would be committing a criminal offense. The armchair lawyer is meant to represent an extreme example of a person who is obsessed with doing every procedure correctly, or in general, feigning being an expert in a topic and using that to feed their own sense of superiority. This is especially apparent when you look at the way he talks, often trying to cite the Russian Constitution and saying things in an extremely professional manner. It all isn't really necessary given the current situation. He is definitely the type of character to tell the police what his rights are and bug his neighbors about any other small violations that he notices. The armchair lawyer is definitely one of the most annoying characters in the entire game, since he's just annoying to talk to, which is also funny because he is one of the only characters we are forced to kill. He opens up with a very suspicious phrase asking if we are armed. The player questions him why he wants to know, and he apologizes, saying that he just wants to know if we can hold our own in these dangerous times. He says that no one will judge us if we end up killing, and notes that our voice tells him that we are capable of pulling the trigger if we have to, even saying that we could strangle someone with our bare hands if it comes down to it. We ask him why he is so fixated on killing, and he asks us back if he seems crazy to us. He then says that before the whole Cataclysm happened, he wouldn't even hurt a fly, but he realized that soft people like him won't survive long, so he wants to learn how to defend himself. So when day comes around, we ask him if he still wants to see us kill one. Where the Bandana Guy says that he changed his mind and doesn't feel ready yet. He still gets sick from seeing corpses, and apparently visitors' bodies keep on moving even after they die, like a guy he saw in the alley. Our character asks him what happened in the alley, and he tells us that he initially went there for safety, but he took the wrong turn and accidentally stepped into a graveyard with bodies all over the place, some still alive. He then saw a man with a gun at the end, but then he cuts himself off because he doesn't want to remember his trauma. When the next day comes around, we ask him to tell us more about the man in the alley. He says that he was wearing a cloak covered with strings of fingers and teeth. There was a kid he was pointing a gun at, yelling at him to show his teeth. The Bandana Guy was hiding behind a nearby dumpster where he saw the kid drop to the ground after being shot, making him realize that in this world you can only be either the prey or the predator. In our final conversation, we tell him that survival doesn't mean you need to become a killer, but he disagrees, saying that we are alive because we showed our strength just like a predator does. He thinks that as long as people fear us, then we are safe, and he doesn't want to become prey, leading him to the conclusion that he needs to learn how to kill. The Bandana Guy depicts a pretty realistic reaction to the whole situation. While he has been shown to take death lightly while talking, when it comes down to it, he's just a normal, cowardly dude. Even if he knows what must be done in order to survive, the Bandana Guy still hesitates at every step, showing that he isn't some heartless monster like the Vigilante, and has some humanity left. He also provides an additional story to the Vigilante, showing that he not only provided his justice in the outskirts where we resided in, but he also went to the city as well. Considering that it was more densely populated and the Bandana Guy described it as a graveyard, it was probably multiple times worse than what we have seen through our window, proving that the Vigilante is truly a dangerous monster who has probably spread more death individually than most visitors. The taxi driver comes to our door asking if he can lay low for a bit. We ask him what happened, where he says that he was a cabbie driver who was driving a passenger that wasn't who he said he was. Now he says that both him and his car are gone. We asked him what happened to his car, and the taxi driver told us that FEMA took it. He was driving a person when he realized that the person's teeth were way too white, so he secretly drove them to FEMA. At first, they congratulated him, but then they tried to take both him and the car. The taxi driver then hit him with a bottle in his coat, then ran away. When we talk to him again, we ask if he thinks FEMA is still searching for him. He says that he hopes not, but understands that he made a mistake by directly heading to them in the first place. He thought he would just take the passenger, but they almost ended up shooting him. But when he thought about it, he really didn't have any other choice since the guy was supposedly a visitor. We then ask him what he would do if he really was a human, which makes the taxi driver a little bit unsettled. He then reminisces about the days he could have just chilled behind the wheel, but now he's paranoid about the passenger being a visitor or a crazy person. We then ask him how long he has been driving a cab. The taxi driver says he has been doing it for a while, and recently acts as his own boss. FEMA doesn't let people move freely, so he decided that money will be useful when this whole thing ends. The taxi driver decided to give expensive rides at night, but those also gave him memories about when he was a kid. He actually became a cabbie because his dad used to be one, but he glosses over how his life didn't end too well. We then say that the taxi driver looks pretty down, where he says that he can't get over his stolen car. We ask him what type of car he had, where he describes it as the most beautiful thing with a bright yellow body, shiny chrome wheels, and smooth curves, then curses FEMA for taking it. In our last conversation, we asked the taxi driver what happened to his father, where he says that he's a bit uncomfortable but trusts us enough to talk about it. He said that one day his mom had to leave for work, so his dad picked him up in his cab, but then they picked up a passenger with an evil appearance, a person everyone in the town knew you couldn't say no to. But the taxi driver's dad was a man of honor, which destroyed the whole family. The man in the suit took away their home and made them move constantly after that. After the debt started building up, the dad started to wish he sold his cab, even calling it cursed. The taxi driver says that it was his dad's pride that cost them everything, forcing him to work pretty young. He then says that he loves and misses him, implying that they assassinated him at one point. While the taxi driver has a pretty sad story with a rough upbringing, the taxi driver has been shown to be a pretty deplorable guy, such as doing a hit and run on the stand-up guy's dog, or taking advantage of the whole situation and charging really expensive taxi fares. Also, if you haven't caught on yet, the guy that ruined the taxi driver's life is really the mobster, who probably had a lot of connections which led to their downfall. Also, he shows both how greedy and indiscriminate FEMA is. Even after trying to help them, they still decided to both take him and his car for some reason, which isn't confirmed to be part of protocol. It shows how they rule with absolute power, justifying their own actions with the guise of safety, even if it really serves their own individual interest. She is one of the few characters who knocks on our door, not even intending to be let in. She wants to talk to us, so we ask her what happened. She tells us that she wanted to help as many abandoned children as possible. After the visitor signs appeared like perfectly white teeth, many innocent children were deemed tainted and feared to be visitors. She tried her best to care for and love them in the rundown kindergarten, but she notes that she wasn't able to save them in the end. We ask what happened to the children, and she coldly remarks that they died in the flames. The other townsfolk were terrified the children might actually be visitors, so they locked the doors and nailed the windows of the old kindergarten shut while the children were still inside, burning it down and forcing the teacher to watch it all. The next day, we show concern and ask if she's okay. She isn't sure, and questions how full-grown adults could be so terrified of children. We tell her that people do worse things, and she asks what could be worse than killing children. Our character asks how long she's been a teacher, and she answers only about 3 months. She admits to finding the children annoying at the time, but after the cataclysm, she realized all of their futures could be ended if she let them die. She then references the song Army Dreamers in a few lines. We approach her the day after, apologizing for the hard questions. She tells us she feels better and comments on how defenseless children are. She tried her best to take in as many abandoned kids as possible. The teacher noticed a pattern in how many parents threw out their children without a second thought, making her wonder if they were ever wanted in the first place. We ask if she has any children of her own, and she denies it. She wonders if, had she had a family, she would have been like the other parents who abandoned their kids, recalling how one of the arsonists was the parent of a child she tried to protect. We try to ease her pain by telling her the deaths weren't her fault, but she cannot shake the hollow feeling inside her. She wonders if the parents even loved their children to begin with, and hopes she was able to give them a little bit of that feeling before they died. In our final conversation, we ask if something is wrong. The kindergarten teacher opens up, saying she is skeptical about what kind of future is left after this mass extinction event. We ask if she's afraid there won't be a place left for her, and she comments that her gentle heart is not fit for violence, and she cannot survive in this new world. Our character asks whether she is really going to just let herself die, and she imagines a world where children have to learn from the murderers who survived this event. We now have a very important decision: yell at her or disregard what she is saying. If we shout at her to pull herself together, she will be stunned for a moment and then start crying. Our character puts their hand on her shoulder and then leaves her alone. Or we can tell her that we don't have time to mope around. She tells us she does not have a cruel enough heart for this, and the events she has witnessed are burned into her mind. She then says she cannot be strong like us, and that there is only one way out for someone like her before she grabs our gun and shoots herself. The kindergarten teacher was simply a soul too innocent to survive in such a ruthless world. She is probably the kindest character in the game, putting the needs of dozens of children over her own survival. Her story further shows how the most affected by the cataclysm were children who were wrongfully accused of being visitors. Considering the horribly traumatic events she had to endure and her adamant reluctance to fight, death is truly the only release she could hope for. The conspiracy theorist is one of the most controversial characters in the entire game. On one side, most people fully believe what he says, but as I will later explain, most of what he says has no backing. The theorist asks if he can trust us, asking if we are with FEMA. We ask him what we need to be trusted with, and he responds confidently saying that it is important information. The theorist says he needs a safe place to hide, and is carrying documents full of state secrets. Our character asks him what kind of secrets, and he talks about election rigging, the moon landing, and government mind control. When morning comes around, we ask the theorist what's in those papers, and he talks about a theory that states visitors aren't real, but instead part of a secret government plan to control the population. He then justifies it, saying that overpopulation is a known problem and reiterating that it makes sense. The next day, we then question the conspiracy theorist further on his papers. He then picks up another one that claims FEMA actually are the visitors. He notes that the suits they wear cover their whole body, meaning they are immune to visitor tests themselves, even saying that FEMA stands for Facility for Eradicating Mankind Altogether. We then ask if he uncovered anything else, where he notes that the pale man seen through the window and that comes to our door isn't two, but instead one person, even saying that it's just the window distorting our view. We then question if what's been said is actually true, and he questions the idea of truth in the first place. He says the truth is subjective and comes from strong personal beliefs anyways. He then provides us one of the biggest pieces of information, saying the visitors are actually brain parasites. The Theorist then urges us to wear earplugs at all times, then asks us to leave him alone so he can do more reading. As I said before, most of what he says makes no sense. His character is supposed to make fun of actual conspiracy theorists, where they just make up theories that usually oppose the government and other scientifically proven phenomena. The only things the game actually supports is the theory that there really is only one pale man, and the brain parasites. The brain parasites might actually be what's controlling the dead bodies, which coincides with the surgeon's info regarding the visitors not being a virus. But overall, I think the game leans more towards the visitors being some supernatural being, one that may have a physical form, but devoutly follows death's instructions. I believe the conspiracy theorist can also represent the player itself, who makes us random theories in their head to explain the game since we are given so little answers. While he is not a visitor, he is one of the most deadly characters in the entire game. The first time that we see him is actually on night 7 through a window, where he is looking through a field for anyone hiding. He then knocks on our door the next day, commenting that it's good we are keeping our distance to improve our chances of survival. We ask who he is, and he comments that he's just someone who goes around cleaning the filth that are visitors. We jokingly ask if that's a broom in his hands, where he agrees, saying that he could do it with his bare hands if he needs to, but the gun makes it easier. He also adds that the most effective way is to lock them in houses and burn them, foreshadowing a future night. We are about to ask him another question when he stops us, saying that it's his turn to ask questions. He wants to know about the threats around the neighborhood, where we can warn him about the pale visitor or FEMA agents, which makes him suspicious. The next night, we can see him out the window again. This time, he pulled out all of the squatters living in our neighbor's basement in a line, interrogating them. If we look out the same window the next day, we can see them all scattered across the floor, meaning he deemed them to be visitors. He decides to visit us again, and he says he didn't have luck finding a certain someone, and that our neighborhood is crawling with visitors. We ask how he spots them, and the vigilante comments that he just follows the TV's and radio's directions, where one sign is enough to put them down. He then asks whether we know a fat guy with a denim jacket, who also has a little girl, which is an obvious reference to our neighbor. We tell him that his house burnt down, where he then forces us to prove that we aren't a visitor by showing him one of our body parts. After he lets us go and says he will come back, we can see him out the window holding what appears to be a gasoline can. The next night, all of the nearby houses are in complete flames, probably by the vigilante. Considering what he said earlier, he probably forced all of the people he thought were visitors inside, then burned the houses to the ground. When night 12 comes around, he visits us for the last time. He reveals that the neighbor is actually his brother, and that he's disappointed he couldn't keep his family safe. We ask if he wants to find his daughter, but he says that it's just a waste of time. He then tells us about a story of a family on the outskirts of town. The wife had visitor signs, but the husband kept on pleading with the vigilante to spare her. When other visitors came to the house, the husband opened the door to let the wife run away, where the vigilante shot both her and the husband, with the kids somehow making it out alive. After that, FEMA came to clean up the house themselves, where the vigilante told them that he already did it for them. They even asked him to join their organization, but he decided against it due to the fact that they bring visitors to the quarantine zones instead of taking them out on the spot. He checks us for visitor signs one more time, then leaves, never to return. His story can end earlier, as if we fail one of the visitor checks, we get one of the endings, where we both pull our guns on each other, with the protagonist actually winning. We then go on a spree hunting anyone who has weapons that want to commit similar acts of vigilantism. Honestly, the wheelchair guy is one of the most confusing characters in the game. He does have a pretty goofy story, but most of it makes no sense at all. When we meet him for the first time, he asks how life is. Our character then blurts out loud if we know him. The man seems surprised, then after hearing our voice realizes we are a different person. He asks how long we have been here, and we say that the house has always been in our family. The wheelchair guy seems surprised, saying that he has the memory of an elephant and that his friend definitely lives here, but then says that since he wheelchaired himself all the way over here, we might as well let him in. The next day, we ask the wheelchair guy who he is looking for, where he reminisces about a friend that had an accident when mining in the mountains. He says that he threw his back out and the seagulls mistook his butt for a nest, making the wheelchair guy burst into laughter. He then remarked that the voices in his head told him to say that really funny joke. The next day, we ask the wheelchair guy if everything is okay. He tells us that it is and says that he's just waiting for his legs to grow back. We then clarify that we were talking about the voices in his head, where he seems disappointed that we didn't get it. The player then asks him if he had a sunstroke, adding that since his hair hasn't fallen out, he's okay. He then goes on a rant about racing in his wheelchair, where we then tell him that we don't believe anything he's saying. The wheelchair guy then goes on another rant about how if one leg is longer than the other, we just run in circles, the same way that the day ends and a new one comes tomorrow. Overall, he just has a full schizophrenic rant. In our fourth conversation, we ask the wheelchair guy how he lost his legs. He tells us that his friend from the mountains wanted to dig a trench in his yard. He got the idea that meat was running under his house and ordered a big drill to find it, with that being the last time he saw him. The player then asks him what happened to his legs, which makes him yell in anger about wanting to know where his friend went. We tell him to forget it, which he agrees with, saying that he forgot about his friend and left to get a beer, making him trip over some tracks, which led to him falling into a moving trolley which cut his legs off. But he corrects himself, saying that it didn't happen, and stands up out of his wheelchair, saying that he needs to stretch for a bit. Our character is completely dumbfounded, which the wheelchair guy responds by saying that he just has a dead leg. We ask him what the whole act was for, and he reveals that he was just sitting that way to keep his legs warmer, and finds it more fun to roll around in a wheelchair. The player calls him a freak, where he brushes it off because at least he is having fun. There honestly isn't too much I can say about the schizophrenic wheelchair guy, since pretty much everything he says is just a lie and made up. But it is an interesting coincidence that there really is a miner underneath our house, with his friend's profile lining up with the miner or the guy who went down the hole already. When we talk to her through our peephole, she asks if we can let her crash at our house for a bit. She tells us that she came to town for her husband who moved for his work, and tried to surprise him with a visit. We ask her how she got here, where she says that she took a cab that took a fortune. She then says that his teeth are as white as porcelain, and suggests that her husband who works at FEMA will knock his teeth out of his mouth. The guy she is referring to is obviously the taxi driver. The player asks the wife if she's from FEMA too, where she declines, saying that they don't accept women. She reveals that she used to work at customs and would be pretty good at discovering visitors with her husband. In our first conversation, we made sure we heard her right, confirming if she worked at customs or not. She agrees, but then goes on a small tangent to make sure we are actually checking people in our house to see if they are visitors. She even suggests that visitors are a bad name and that calling them freaks would be more appropriate. We ask her why she hates the visitors, and she seems surprised we asked her that in the first place. The wife talks about the news, blaming them for everything, even suggesting that they made a mistake for not taking her in since she can easily sniff them all out. Our character asks her why she's so eager to work for FEMA, and she says it's because she knows that the visitors can be stopped. The wife says that she has already done her part since she ratted out her neighbor who turns out to be the wounded man the day before. But after that, they decided to hire her husband, serving as a slap in the face. We question why she turned in her neighbor, and the FEMA agent's wife says that it's because he was a visitor. She said that he creeps her out, and turning him in felt good. That's when she concluded that she should be a FEMA agent and protect our lands like her time working in the border. In our fifth conversation, we point out that she's not truly here for her husband, but instead to work at FEMA. This is when the wife finally quits the act and tells us that she came to complain until she gets the job. She complains that after catching the visitor, the job was given to her husband, and and that all of it makes no sense, even going as far as to saying that she hates her husband with her entire soul. The wife then gives us a phone number to call FEMA internally, instructing us to promote her well. When we call the number, we tell the admissions that we have one of the FEMA agents' wives. He seems confused, asking for our question and wonders if we are trying to threaten him. We then say it is a threat, making him sigh loudly and asking for us to not waste his time again. In our final conversation, the player asks if customs were better since she had more power, and this absolutely infuriates the woman, who suggests that we think we are better since people are coming to us for shelter, making all of the calls. But she makes sure to say that it isn't our job, but instead FEMA's. We are trying to be judge, jury, and executioner, but the only one who has the authority to do that is FEMA itself. Overall, the FEMA agent's wife is a really annoying character. She appears to fit the Karen archetype, with an overinflated ego and self-worth. She does reveal a pretty important fact though, that only men are allowed into FEMA. This probably means that they believe the worst is soon to come, and need only the most capable people for the apocalypse. The Mushroom Guy is a pretty interesting character and leads to one of the game's endings. To meet him, you must first let in the cat lady, then on night 6 he will appear at our door and greet us. Our character asks who he is, and he explains that he is an old man who knows a bit about mushrooms, but he recently heard from the mycelium that the Mushroom Festival is upon us, and that we don't have much time. The player questions him about mycelium, which he understands that it's hard for normal people to understand. He explains the mycelium is how mushrooms talk to each other, and by reading the Book of Smiles he learned to hear them. They told him about the Mushroom Festival drawing near, saying that it's a horrible event. To which we instantly respond asking what the book is. The Mushroom Man explains that it's the most special book in the world, but it's too long for us to read. He then tore out the most important page and offered it to us. After accepting it, he says that he will be back when everything is sorted out, praying for our good health in a crazy way. We can then read the page from the Book of Smiles, where we must find a mushroom in our basement and eat it from our fridge. The next day, we must look for an apple on one of our shelves and then a clock above our bed. After we do all of that, he comes back to our house on day 9, glad that we did everything we were asked to do. He hopes that it was enough to stop the festival, noting that the ritual did not work. We question the Mushroom Man on how he could tell, where the man happily responds that the mycelium told him. But now everything is in danger because the mushrooms have been growing too fast. The player then asks how our actions stop the festival, where he explains an old ritual that makes the mushrooms small, stopping it from ever beginning. He bids us farewell, saying that he will be back when the time is right. When he eventually returns, he once again says that there is chaos and that the ritual didn't work. The player asks the Mushroom Man why the ritual didn't work, where he said that malice was building up in its threads that started to clog up. The mushrooms are like a liver trying to get rid itself of poison, but all of the malice being built up in the world is making the mushroom grow to huge sizes. He then suggests that we must head to Mushroom Land, making it clear that it's a scary place that no man has been to, for good reason. After that, we have a cutscene where we follow him, eventually failing to stop the festival. The whole story with the Mushroom Man is honestly just a whole trip and a half. I interpreted it more as the effects of psychedelics in a survival scenario, where its effects made him completely ignore the actual threat, that being the visitors and the sun, but instead focus his time on ending the Mushroom Festival, which in normal playthroughs never occurs, meaning that it was all probably happening just inside his head. Kind of like the cashier lady, he appears to not even be sure if he himself is a visitor, but he also has some of the most intriguing information in the entire game. When he knocks on the door, he asks if we have seen his daughter, a girl wearing a poncho with purple hair. We can either be rude to him or simply say she is not in our house. He talks about how during the day of the heat wave, he woke up to his daughter missing and wants to both find her and escape FEMA. He also notes that he is wanted by FEMA for some purpose, which we later will discover is because of his visitor status. We then let him in, and he thanked us, adding the iconic line, "Because you and I, we're immortal." When we talk to him again, we ask about that last phrase he gave us, and the Immortal Man responds that it's only something we can discover when we die, that the immortality he is talking about is reincarnation, and even adds that visitors were probably reborn humans. He also adds that he is sure to find his daughter either in this life or the next, since they never truly die. The next day, we ask why FEMA is looking for him, where he recounts a story taking place at the beginning of the game. He reveals that there were rumors about demons on the outskirts of town, and FEMA knew about it but didn't do anything. Those legends obviously were about visitors before they were found on the news. We ask how he survived, and he himself doesn't even know. He says it's luck, or God was looking out for him. But even he realizes that it's possible he is already dead and reincarnated to his current form. After that, we ask him if he knows anything else. And it turns out he knows a lot of incriminating information about FEMA. How they knew about the visitors and didn't do anything, were laundering government money, and removed any witnesses. We conclude by asking where the visitors come from, where he once again says from the outskirts of town. He knew that the demons from 2 years ago are the same as the visitors, and FEMA was actually the people who let them in. He also reveals that visitors aren't aliens, but instead living creatures native to Earth. Then says he can't stay any longer and goes to search for his daughter. The Immortal Man provides a lot of important info, such as evidence that FEMA is a truly corrupt system that doesn't care about safety, and even provides a plausible explanation for the visitors being demons. Also, as for his daughter, it's basically confirmed that it is not the Raincoat Kid you see nearing the end of the game. When he says his daughter vanished, it is very possible that he ate her during the night and lost all of his memories of that event. What is up with this creepy Raincoat Kid that appears at our door? Around the end of the game, this kid can come, ominously saying that someone is not asleep even though he should be. We ask the kid if he's lost, and the kid says that all the doors look the same in the dark. He needed to see the kitchen light, but after hearing the floorboard creak as we approached the door, he noticed that the echo was wrong. Our character is visually confused, asking what he is looking for, where the Raincoat Kid says that our smell, voice, and house is wrong, disappearing into the night. The whole interaction makes zero sense, until you realize that he's actually a reference to another game, Static Dread the Lighthouse. To my knowledge, he is some dimension-traveling being that hunts down people who aren't where they should be, explaining why he's looking for someone but just happened to knock on the wrong door. It's also interesting to note that the Pale Visitor is an Easter egg in that game as well, so both of these games reference each other. When we first see him, he asks if he can crash here for the night. We notice his smile and ask why he is so cheerful, where he explains that he doesn't want to contribute any more anger to the already crazy situation. And that art, the next generation, and the joy of life itself is worth staying alive for. We then ask him what there is to be happy about, and he says that he shouldn't be the one to list it out, since it should be what we used to love doing before the cataclysm hit. The next day, we ask the Cheerful Man if he is still happy. And he responds that he isn't, but hasn't fallen apart yet. The Cheerful Man says that as long as we forgive each other and show compassion, our humanity will come out and things will improve. Our character then asks if he has always been like this, and he reveals that he actually used to be a pretty angry person, snapping over nothing and slamming doors so hard they broke the frame. But then he realized that anger was slowly destroying himself on the inside, then the people around him. After lashing out at a girl who tried to help him but died shortly after, he realized that he had to change, otherwise he would destroy everything he touched. The next day we asked him what he lost, where the Cheerful Man solemnly responded that it was his family. One day he was leaving the house just for a minute to get water, and when he came back everything was burnt down. He then was filled with regret, wondering if he could have saved them and why he left at that moment. But he slowly realized that the important thing wasn't about saving the past, but instead bringing it with you, where he uses his traumatic memories to fuel his strength for helping others, and most importantly as motivation to help find purpose after everything seems to fall apart around you. We then asked if he managed to live past losing his whole family, and he tells us that he did, but it wasn't easy. He blamed himself for a long time, and grief made it even worse. But at some point, he realized that he needed to forgive everything. He needed to forgive himself for not changing the past, and forgive fate itself no matter how cruel it is, because he realized that the thing truly bringing him down was his anger. Our character then asks what's driving him now, and the Cheerful Man says that it's his belief that people can be better. He does not believe in miracles, but instead in the power of lifting each other up, that the small things make the world a little bit better. In our final conversation, we ask him if he would want everything he lost back, which he of course agrees, but not in the way we think. He says that loss is simply a part of life that is meant to shape us. He would give up almost anything to see them again, but he realizes that the most important thing is the lesson it taught. He says that our time is limited and we shouldn't waste it worrying about what we lost, but instead holding on to what we have. The Cheerful Man's story, while not super significant to the game's lore, paints a hopeful picture of what humanity can eventually become. Instead of believing that since the world is ending, all attention should be spent solely on survival, like almost every other character, the Cheerful Man instead wants to use his remaining time to help others. He believes not only that we can eventually get out of this cataclysmic event, but also in everyone's ability to learn how to forgive each other for anything that happened after overcoming our personal guilt and grief. As he said, if there is compassion, there is humanity, and if we combine our efforts together, we can at least prevent things from getting worse. When we answer the door, she notices our presence and asks if she can be let in. We then respond somewhat rudely, asking if it looks empty. The woman then says that she didn't mean it that way, she is just being cautious because apparently a lot of horrible stuff is happening in the outskirts where we live. We ask her what she is running from, but she says that she isn't running at all. She isn't a fan of formalities and surmised that the cities won't be safe for long. The next day, we told her that she talked a lot on the doorstep, and she said that it happens whenever she is nervous, where she feels a need to explain the whole situation in detail. And she reveals that she also used to be a radio host. We respond completely surprised, and she doesn't even attempt to prove herself, asserting that it became impossible to stay there. The radio station has lost basically all its integrity, where conmen are taking advantage of the situation in order to sell peace of mind and crackpot solutions. After she listens to the radio, she is honestly surprised that we are even still alive. We then ask her if she got sick of that place and left, and she points to a situation that completely broke her. The people in the radio station were told that an expert would come to talk about the visitors, and he even claimed that he found a way to fight them, that being some overpriced jar full of something. She knew something was up, so she spent the entire week digging into his past and shady deals, getting ready to rip his integrity to shreds on air. But then he suddenly bailed because someone stole his documents, and he ghosted them after that. We then ask if she is done with journalism, and she agrees, stating that surviving is the only plan she has left. She tried to sneak into different departments, but the only thing she discovered was how the world was going downhill. The tattooed woman also read the daily news reports from the police that they based their news segments on. She noticed that after a while they started sending the reports late, and the way that they were written was different. That was when she decided that the city was not safe, and it would be better to live on the edge of town. At some point, she even considered the woods, but concluded that it wasn't safe enough because of the visitors. The tattooed woman teaches us a lot of important information about FEMA, and more importantly, the conspiracy theorist. She confirms that FEMA has taken control of not only the government, but also the media, and the conspiracy theorist is almost confirmed to be another crazy dude. When she said that he was going to sell some overpriced jar of nonsense, it could actually be kombucha, the drink that lets us save the game. And in a way, it does help us fight the visitors, because we can see who dies that night, then reverse the save until we catch them. But considering that she built enough info to roast him on air, in general, he is probably just another crazy person who happened to get something correct by accident, and the rest of his theories lose their credibility. Also, she may be the only character to have an eye tattoo. He shows up at our door, overly friendly, asking if he can crash here for a while. He says everyone else is either gone, thrown out, or missing, and admits that he thought he had a lot more friends than he actually did. He used to live with his mother and grandmother, but they were forced out after debt collectors got involved, and everything spiraled from there. When we ask about his friends, he explains that they all came from the theater. They drank together, partied together, and talked like they'd always have each other's backs. But once things started going wrong, he couldn't reach any of them. Everyone suddenly certainly had their own problems, and the cataclysm only made things worse. The next day, he talks more about theater itself. He studied theater production and quickly admits that it's not something he'd ever recommend. From the outside, it looks refined and meaningful, but in reality, it's a dying art. Only a handful of people ever make it to big stages, while everyone else scrambles for the scraps, to the point that he remarks, theater is just one big disappointment. When we push him to talk about his friends again, he reveals a little bit more about his background. His life used to be full of people, to the point that he even planned to rent out a play with 100 people. But as time went on, the parties stopped, and he realized most of those people weren't really friends. They were just using him to boost their careers or talk behind his back. But at least he decided to make a list and decide which friends weren't worth keeping. We ask where his friends from the list are, and he talks about how when the debt collectors looked for him, he went around looking for a friend that could help. He found one of his friends burnt alive because he fell asleep drunk on a playground, and another one was killed because they thought he was a visitor. That made him especially angry, because he knew those signs didn't mean anything and they killed him for no reason. In our final conversation, we ask what the story with the collectors was. He talks about his childhood, where at a young age his father left his family, noting that he was a cheater and drunk, but also worked in theater, with his mum also working in the costume department. She tried her best to protect him by taking out loans when she couldn't land big enough jobs. But this ended up getting loan sharks coming to their house and at one point breaking his mom and grandma's fingers and legs. After that, 2 huge guys showed up at the door, but he was too afraid to do anything and ran away, leaving his mother and grandma defenseless. He hated himself for doing that, calling himself a coward who is just selfishly scared. The theater guy is yet another tragic character. While he doesn't hold much significance in the game, he does give us an interesting view into the world of plays. Theater in general is an art that is slowly dying, with modern entertainment being pushed to screens due to its convenience. And many people forget to consider all of the peoples whose livelihoods depend on it, such as the actors and set designers. It is a profession that will only become more and more competitive until it becomes a completely irrelevant part of life. When the underwear guy is seen at our door, he asks to be let in, but we immediately question the man why he's just walking around in underwear. He then points out that it's really hot, wondering why people haven't even figured that out. He noticed that people were still walking around with jackets like it was snowing, while the first thing he did after leaving prison was throw away his clothes. We then ask why he's doing that at our place, but he says that he has nowhere else to go. He has no money, ex-wife has a new man, and has no place to stay. Then he notices how off the map our house is and wants to crash there. The next day we asked him where his tattoos were if he did time. He says that he just doesn't have them, but he really was in prison. But he adds that he was never in for anything too serious like murder. The man then asks us how we can be calling the shots here. We question him what he means, and the underwear guy says that we are letting in just about anybody. He says that they are bad business, and that there's going to be a lot of problems if we don't just let in real men who can carry their weight. We ask if we should just turn away the elderly, women, and kids, and he completely agrees. But this gets us angry, and the man backs down a little bit. But he does say that it does bother him that everyone else is still wearing clothes in this heat. The next day, we ask him if he's cold like that, and he calls us an idiot back for wearing a sweater. We say that those clothes are a part of us, where he brushes us off, saying that the streets are as hot as hell while we are clowning around with feathers in our caps, with sweat dripping. He then suggests that if someone doesn't sweat with all those layers on, then maybe we aren't normal, which our character instantly challenges. He tells us to relax, since he clarifies that he was really accusing the other people in our house to be visitors. We then ask if we are just supposed to strip down, which he disagrees with, saying that it's just weird and almost making the conversation go in another circle. We then ask him what he wanted to say the last time. The man in underwear first makes sure that we are open to listening, then says that everyone here is a bad apple. We question him why he thinks that, where he once again says that it's weird how everyone is dressed like they don't feel the heat. The underwear guy asks us if we even know how to identify them, and we agree, saying that we have seen the television reports. He hopes we do, and says that it would suck if those signs weren't accurate, even suggesting that he felt safer in jail. Our character questions why he didn't just stay in jail, and he says that's because he finished his time, being his 3rd release. The first time was when he was a child, then he got out and had a wife and kid. When the recession hit, he had to steal food to save them, causing him to return to crime. He then got arrested 2 times after that, and both his wife and kids moved on. The protagonist asks him what's stopping him from going back, and he just says that he doesn't have a good reason yet. He feels like an old dog that cannot change. He even admires how people in jail were honest about who they were, but now he isn't too sure, guessing that there might be more rotten souls out of jail than he thought. Also, if you paid attention to his way of speaking, it's pretty clear that the ex-con didn't grow up in Russia since he uses Australian phrases. Also, the whole clothes obsession could actually reveal more about his inner thoughts than you probably believe. It acts as a visual representation of his openness and boldness in general, deciding to take the logical steps to counter the heat despite the awkwardness it causes. After all of the time in prison, his way of thinking has completely changed and struggles to fathom why people don't do the same as him, deciding to not consider the otherwise obvious factors such as shame and comfort. The Fairytale Enjoyer comes to our door, asking if we have enough room for one more person. The player questions why he came here, where the Fairytale Enjoyer says that he finished college but finding a job is hard, so he has a part-time job at a coffee shop. He goes on a small rant talking about how people who work at nightclubs are lucky, his landlord not liking him, and promising us that he will return the favor someday. When we talk to the Fairytale Enjoyer the next day, we say that he's lost in thought. He remembered a story he heard when he was a kid, where an evil dragon burned the nests of birds. In a way, they were equal since they had wings and the same sky, but because of the dragon's strength, he had the capabilities to burn everything the bird loved. His father said that everyone has their own sleeping dragon, which the Fairytale Enjoyer only understood later in life. We come to him the next day and ask if he's thinking of fairy tales again. He agrees, talking about a story where a frozen city was changed by a kind glassblower who lit their streets and greeted them daily, slowly melting the ice in their hearts. The Fairytale Enjoyer realized that the story is really talking about slowly changing ourselves for the better, reminiscing how his mother used to like this story. In our final conversation, we ask the Fairytale Enjoyer what story he has for us today. He thinks of a few, even referencing a story about the Pale Visitor, then realizing that in all of those stories, good always prevailed. The man wants that to be the case, where eventually the world will get better and his parents will still be alive. But he stops himself, asking for some time alone. His story is supposed to represent the difference between idealism and reality, where fairy tales don't actually exist, but instead exist as happy examples and models of what we want society to be. Also, the Fairytale Enjoyer is an absolute yapper, giving walls of text every time you try to talk to him, leaving us with no variance in dialogue options. When he knocks on our door, he says what's up and calls the night pure magic. Our character asks if he is crazy, and he tells us to not act so rude. He then calls us brother because he is completely ecstatic that his mortgage is gone. We ask him what he is doing out here then, and he says that he doesn't want to talk about it in the open. We say that he's not much of a talker, and the debtor responds that it's because we aren't happy for him. He then talks about how jealous he is of our house, saying that we are living the dream. The next day we ask why he is so sure they will forget about his loan. He asks if we are joking because we have reached the end of the world, where things like banks or the economy become irrelevant. He tells us that he isn't receiving any more alerts like usual, meaning that this isn't his first time being in debt, but this time it's completely silent, and they aren't handing out new loans. He then says that he has been released from financial slavery, where our character tells him to not relax just yet. He responds that they are probably busy digging up bunkers and don't have time to search for a country bumpkin like him. The protagonist then asks why he isn't at his own place. The debtor then says that he actually is renting it out, even though money is essentially useless now, even commenting that if you need something you can just break a window and take it. We then ask why he is dodging the question, where he finally reveals that he is scared to go back. He rented it out to a family of 2, but he received some calls from the neighbors that they heard screaming and saw people go in and out. But he also adds that the neighbors could be crazy. The next day we asked him if there was any more news about his tenants, but he says that there are more important issues. He called the neighbors yesterday, and it turns out that the people working at the banks are looking for him. He says that it's crazy they are still trying to come for him when the sun might explode at any moment, and that they should be busy trying to stay alive. He then says that he needs to crash at our house for a bit, then might live with his relatives again. In our final conversation, we ask if he is going back to his apartment. The debtor tells us that he used the phone again, and it turns out the bank froze all of his accounts. They said it was because of his debts. but he notes that they could have just deducted the amount they needed instead. He suggests that it was probably FEMA's doing, using it to pay for their personal projects, with his apartment probably turning into a visitor nest or FEMA lab. He then wants to stay at our house for a bit because he is too embarrassed to ask his family for help. The Debtor shows how infatuated their world is with money. Of course, this is meant to parallel ours, but even in the direst situation with constant death and despair, they are still worried about something as trivial as money. And for people like the Debtor and Amogus Guy, this situation is actually the best case scenario, where they can essentially erase their debt because almost everyone is too preoccupied with trying to stay alive. When we look through our peephole, the college runaway can be seen asking to be let in. We ask if he needs something, where he says that he needs somewhere to stay since his dorm isn't an option anymore. We ask why, where he says to just let him inside, not really telling us more. The next day we asked him about his dorm. He says that he didn't really mention it, but he wasn't actually born here, he just came to study. But then, everything went wrong, and they locked them all in their dorms, afraid of the visitor causing virus. When he heard they were bringing people to the quarantine zones, he knew he had to act. So he climbed out of the window and ran away, only with his jacket. We asked why he brought only his jacket, and he says that it's his favorite. Not because of the price, but due to it being one of the only things he has from his brother. Our character then asks him what happened to his brother, where the college runaway says that FEMA took him. He used to be a sailor, and one day he bought an expensive jacket as a gift for him. The runaway admits that it has gotten him into trouble since it has almost been stolen many times, but he protects it since it's a precious memory of his brother. We then ask why he hasn't considered finding his brother in the quarantine zone, where he reveals that they actually enlisted him into FEMA itself. We make sure we heard him right, where he confirms that he is actually a FEMA officer now. They just came one day and didn't give him a choice, where the college runaway adds that he never would have joined them willingly. They are the reason why he's so afraid of getting caught, since he's terrified that the person taking him to the quarantine zones could be his brother. He questions if his brother would break the rules and let him go, or if he would follow his orders and march him with the others. The scariest thing to him is the idea that if they instructed the officers to shoot, it may even be his brother behind the mask. The college runaway's story gives us a little bit more insight on how people are enlisted into FEMA. Similar to our player's ending, if you prove yourself loyal enough, they just come to your door and forcefully conscript you. He also said that his brother was a sailor, implying that he might even have military experience. This means that a lot of the FEMA agents could be inactive or had prior service, meaning that most of them not only feel some sense of duty, but they have some military experience. He comes to our door saying that he hopes he doesn't look too messed up to be let in. We ask him if we should be worried, and he says that there is nothing wrong with him. He was just born with bad skin, and everyone keeps on treating him like a contagious visitor because of it. We tell him that everyone is paranoid these days, and he responds saying that he isn't one. We then respond that we will see about that, and he brushes it off. We agree to let him in, and he is thankful for not judging him solely off of his looks. The next day, we ask him if it is hard to look as disfigured as he does, and he responds with not really. Except when he was a kid at school, he was constantly made fun of and called a leper, scared to play with him because they thought they would catch a disease. When he grew up, people stopped judging him as much, only receiving stares from others. But when the cataclysm hit, the old prejudice came back, and everyone now treats him like a visitor. Our character asks if they label him as a visitor solely based off of his skin, and he says, of course. He then says that it's a present-day witch hunt, with FEMA holding the power. He then suggests that they might have made up the idea of visitors. We tell him that he might be right, and he calls visitors a concept you would only see from a movie. He then says it's used as their way to take over the government, where through fear they can throw any political opponents in quarantine zones while still appearing to be the good guys. He is also scared that if FEMA gets their hands on him, they will do something horrible. In our final conversation, we ask why he thinks FEMA will do something bad, and he says that because of his condition, he will have a higher chance of being picked out of a crowd for experiments. We try to reassure him, saying that he doesn't have to worry, but he fights back, suggesting that they will knock on the door and pick him out to send to one of the quarantine zones. He then goes on a small rant talking about the rampant labeling humanity is guilty of, where simply by judging people through their looks, they decide whether or not they belong. And because of that cruel nature, people like him who were unlucky have to pay the price. As you might have guessed, the Leper Guy actually has leprosy, which is a chronic infectious disease which leads to physical disfigurement and disability. Although it is curable, it will still leave long-term physical impairments. The funny thing about this character is that he was actually right about most of the things he said. While visitors are in fact real in this universe, his whole conclusion that FEMA is using fear to gain power to eventually overthrow the government is pretty much spot on. It appears that because of his years of constant discrimination, he was able to understand human nature enough to perfectly predict their true objective. The creepy guy is one of the most fascinating characters, as he is one of the few that actually disturbed me. Probably because of his weird mannerisms and way of speaking. When we talk to him through our peephole, he says that he's nervous and was staying at the Hope Hotel. The creepy guy is too nervous to go back, and when questioned about it, he says that a girl in a yellow raincoat is there, which he believes is actually a visitor. Surprisingly enough, this might actually be the kid the Immortal Man is looking for. The only problem is that she was taken by FEMA. The player asks why he doesn't go to his relatives, and he explains that he was never wanted by them in the first place and completely abandoned him after helping once. The next day we blurt out that he's weird, which slightly offends the creepy guy. He explains that he was put in an insane asylum by his parents for 10 years after he did something wrong, then suddenly stops, pulling out an imaginary phone to call the hotel. We asked the creepy guy what he was saying before, and the creepy guy relived some trauma of him being bullied in school every day. He was pushed to the point of becoming insane, resulting in him eventually fighting back. The only problem is that he went too far, hitting them until they died, which the creepy man later admits he enjoyed thoroughly. In our final conversation, we tell him that the asylum didn't do him any good, which he agrees with. He even comments on how staying in a vegetable state made him even more crazy. The creepy guy even asks us to hurt him, which we of course ignore and leave him alone. The creepy guy is definitely the craziest person in the entire game, coming from an insane asylum. It even appears that he gets some sort of pleasure from debilitating levels of pain, which is definitely weird. When he knocks on our door, he says that he needs to take shelter, otherwise he might become blind soon. He also wants to crash for a few nights, but adding that he isn't some freeloader who won't stay forever. We ask what he has on him, and he simply responds that he has a mini-amp and a couple bottles of water. The Rockstar also adds that a visitor was found nearby him, but he was actually pretty cool with the whole process. When we talk to him the next day, we point out that he was just daydreaming. The Rockstar then goes on about the past of his old band. Back then, after every funeral, they would play rock songs to deal with the grief, even to the point of going 3 nights straight. He said that it helped to forget the man who just died, only thinking about his guitar. We then ask him if it's hard that he doesn't have the guitar with him. The Rockstar agrees, once again reminiscing about the old times. They would play in the kitchen at half volume so that the neighbors wouldn't call the cops. Every song someone would make it about a person who died, and he thought the band would eventually make it out of sofa gigs. But they couldn't handle their crazy life, and a lot of them either overdosed or crashed their car. He then tells us that next night he was going to head out. When he returns the next day, we ask where he went. The Rockstar said he went back to their old practice spot, which was worse for wear. He turned on the metronome over there, but even that didn't work. He then goes on about how life always got in their way. As a kid, he thought that since the recession and war was over, life would finally go up. But as he matured, he realized he was completely wrong. In our last conversation, we ask him if anything was on his mind, and he finally gives it to us straight, saying that in truth, all of his stories were during warm-ups and fill-ins, and that he never had the spotlight. He feels sorry for lying to us, and reveals that he just wanted to pretend that he actually made it. The Rockstar wanted to appear stronger than he was, but he was actually acting like a kid. After we pointed the gun at him at the door, he became someone different, someone more pathetic, and he realizes if he continues like this, he will eventually end up dead. But at this point, he doesn't even care anymore. The Rockstar reveals some important information, although very briefly. He says their country received a war and recession, and considering that he doesn't look too old, it might have only been a decade or two ago, which could explain why so many of the adults are traumatized and crazed. But his character is supposed to represent someone who never lived up to their dreams, someone who wanted to become a great celebrity but never accomplished it. And as he eventually realized, embellishing his situation only made himself feel worse. The punk girl comes to our door, actually respecting how we have a strong reputation. We thank her, where she reiterates that she meant that compliment, since we are someone who doesn't go down without a fight. We ask if she's desperate too, which she disagrees with, saying that she might be crazy, but definitely not desperate. The next day, we guess that she had a rough life. She makes it clear that anyone who had it easy is probably dead by now. She explains how, if you don't have some backbone, it's easy to become the victim, and everyone is slowly becoming a maniac. But she suggests that we are different since we can maintain our level of humanity. The player says that we don't know if we can, which she makes clear isn't enough of an answer. We tell the punk girl that we don't see the value in comforting others, which she once again agrees with. She says that too many people are dependent on others and bring everyone down with them when things go wrong. She then suddenly has a bad memory and asks to talk later. In our third conversation, we ask what she has, revealing that she looked at the box we are hiding in the closet. She realized that we aren't trying to stay alive, but instead are trapped in this house. Our character simply responds with no, but the punk girl sees through our tough act and notices the fear behind our voice. She thought we became a hardened person, but in reality we are just another scared soul who just happened to live, making her completely disappointed in us. In our final conversation, we question the punk girl on what else she has seen, where she responds by saying she only did it in order to better understand what type of person we were like. She then opens up by revealing her own past, where she was taken advantage of by a guy she met before, being tricked into his room where another guy was waiting for her. After that, she felt horrible, like a filth she couldn't wash off. She believes that people like that deserve no pity, but neither do the weak, adding that she agrees to never go through our stuff again. The punk girl actually reveals a lot of important information about the main playable character. It reveals that the box in the closet really is full of past memories the main character is afraid to get rid of, and the whole tough act we give off is actually as a defensive mechanism in order to not be hurt by others. She also taught us that the player doesn't leave the house because of the mental trauma he had from his parents, something that wasn't completely confirmed until now. When we answer the door, a stranger immediately asks for help, explaining that he isn't from around here. We ask what the problem is, and he tells us that there's been a mistake since he's stuck in the city. The airport is shut down, the trains aren't running, and there's no clear way out. We point out that he chose a pretty terrible time to go sightseeing, and he agrees, saying that if he'd known what would happen with the sun, he never would have come in the first place. But now he's stranded, out of money, and can't afford a hotel, so he asks if he can stay with us. We let him inside, and he thanks us sincerely. Once he's settled in, we ask where he was planning to go. The tourist reacts bitterly, saying there's no point anymore since he's probably never getting home. He curses the sun, curses the visitors, and wonders if this disaster is happening everywhere or just here. He admits he had planned this trip for a long time, saving money and begging for time off work, only for it to end before it even began. We ask why he didn't leave earlier, and he explains that there was always something in the way, one excuse after another. He truly believed this was the perfect time to travel, to finally feel the sun on his skin. Now, the tourist says that he should have gone sooner and seen the world while it was still possible. Instead, he will only ever see it in pictures. Imagining all those countries slowly going to hell, we try to reframe it, suggesting that maybe he got lucky since at least he won't be burned alive. That comment sets him off. He accuses us of making fun of him and explains that he spent his entire life dreaming of seeing the world, and now he doesn't even know if he'll get to see anything at all. We bluntly remind him that at least he is alive, but even that doesn't comfort him. He says it's only temporary anyway, and that the sun will blow up and that will be the end of it. In his mind, he's going to die without ever seeing the world he dreamed about. We finally snap and tell him to stop throwing himself a pity party. That's when the tourist breaks down. He trails off, struggling to speak, before apologizing. He admits he can't stop regretting everything. What hurts the most, he realizes, is that nothing was truly stopping him from going earlier. He kept delaying his life, convincing himself there would always be more time. Now it's too late. The world is falling apart, and there's still so much he wanted to see and do. He says he'll have to learn to live with that regret somehow. Before the conversation ends, the tourist thanks us for listening. As a final gesture, he gives us kombucha, saying we we might need it. The Tourist is actually the most normal character in the entire game. While we have complete nutjobs who were former gangsters or tragic characters who watched everyone around them die, the Tourist is simply a guy who got unlucky. Because he is just a tourist who barely arrived, he gives us no clues about other characters or organizations in the game. Instead, he is used as a physical representation of procrastination. He shows how people blame urgent matters like work or saving, along with short-term thinking, as the reason they never reach their long-term goals. He was likely included as a subtle message from the developers to do what you truly want to do before an unforeseeable event in the future gets in the way. He comes to our door, happy that someone is there. He tells us that he is wired, but that the Enerjeka he is drinking isn't hitting like it used to. We ask where he is heading with that much energy drink in his system, and he simply responds somewhere far away. He doesn't want to stay in one place because of the storm that is coming, and he remarks that he wants to know how others are going to face it. He wants to keep moving around until he either burns up in the sun or is eaten by visitors. We ask why he isn't trying to find safety, and he asks us what we mean. He tells us that the further he travels, the higher chance he has of finding the solution, even saying that humanity's last hope may be stashed somewhere in our house, and that if he just stayed in his apartment, he would have never found it. We ask him what comes after, and he says that he would simply run until he finds what he is looking for, which even he looks unsure about. When we talk to him the next day, we ask him about the stories he promised to tell us. He says that we should trade tales, and that we should share something first. We reply somewhat rudely, saying that we are not open to sharing stories with someone like him. Then he starts telling us one of his tales. He said that he was at a bar or somewhere else. He wasn't entirely sure, probably because he was drunk. After spending too long thinking, we tell him to hurry on with the story. He continues, saying that he was sitting in the bar that was half empty, with music blasting in his ears. Then he heard someone yelling, loud enough to be heard through his headphones. He then has a side tangent, saying that he was in the middle of an absolute banger of a song. But then we act weirded out, and he continues what he was saying. He took off his headphones and saw a tall guy yelling at some poor person. He couldn't hear their argument, but the tall man seemed too drunk to form a single sentence. The tall man then screams and slaps the other dude, making him fall down to the floor, and the Enerjeka Addict ran away from the bar. We asked him what happened after that, but he just said that everywhere he goes just happens to meet misfortune, hoping that our place isn't the same. The next day, we ask if our place feels safe, which he isn't sure about. He feels like our house is a safe haven, but something is still off. We ask when he's heading out, and the Enerjeka Addict responds with soon, since he doesn't like staying in one place too long, and everything in our house screams death, which he has had enough of. In our third conversation, we ask if he's set, and he tells us that he's ready to leave tonight. The player makes sure to remind him that he can't outrun everything, but he isn't too sure about that, implying that staying in one place might not be any better. We wish him luck, and he thanks us, hoping that he will have a few tales to tell us about in the future. But weirdly enough, we see him the next day, and we confront him about it. He says that he didn't leave because he wanted to warn us first about something he felt outside our window. He says that death is on our tail, and he has this weird feeling about it. He suggests that we should leave too, then once again wishes us farewell, but actually leaves this time. The Enerjeka Addict is a pretty interesting character because he was able to successfully suspect the pale visitor and death's influence around our house. If he uses his ability well, he might actually be able to survive this apocalypse by choosing the right places to stay and avoiding danger overall. Once again, thanks to Warthunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget that it's available on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. And by using the links in either my pinned comment or the description, new and returning players who haven't played in 6 months on PC and consoles can get exclusive cosmetics, multiple premium vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, and more for free.